Everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. Joe Biden speaking today in Michigan, touting the Obama administration saving the auto industry, and he did weigh in on this subject.
On the day that we hit 190,000 dead in the United States because of COVID-19, we just learned from the Washington Post columnist Bob Woodward that the President of the United States has admitted on tape in February he knew about COVID-19 that had passed through the air. He knew how deadly it was. It was much more deadly than the flu. He knew and purposely played it down. Worse, he lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He had the information. He knew how dangerous it was. And while this deadly disease ripped through our nation, he failed to do his job on purpose. It was a life and death betrayal of the American people. Experts say that if he had acted just 1 week sooner, 36,000 people would have been saved. If he acted 2 weeks sooner, back in March, 54,000 lives would have been spared in March and April alone. You know, his failure has not only cost lives, it sent our economy in a tailspin. It cost millions more in American livelihoods. This is a recession created by Donald Trump's negligence, and he is unfit for this job as a consequence of it. How many schools aren't open right now? How many kids are starting the new school year the same way they ended the last one, at home? How many parents feel abandoned and overwhelmed? How many frontline workers are exhausted and pushed to their limits? And how many families are missing loved ones at their dinner table tonight because of his failures. It's beyond despicable. It's a dereliction of duty. It's a disgrace.
Well, that's how you come out swinging, Scott Bolden. Final comment.
Yeah, let's not forget about the impact of his lies on this economy. 14 million people unemployed, businesses shut down that may never come back, the impact on small businesses, and a economic depression, all caused by him playing down or calling this a hoax. When I first heard the tape, I thought about what Donald Trump said. He said, I could shoot somebody on New York Avenue or Fifth Avenue and they still support me. But we're going to see whether they still support him with a hand in over 200,000 deaths because of his lies to the American people. I hope Democrats and good Republicans and independents make him dead wrong about this one, because this one has not only had a devastating impact on the economy, but on family members and the lives of those who have lost due to COVID-19. This is just really, really bad. Really bad.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020 Census. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that... In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. Joe Biden speaking today in Michigan, touting the Obama administration saving the auto industry, and he did weigh in on this subject.
On the day that we hit 190,000 dead in the United States because of COVID-19, we just learned from the Washington Post columnist Bob Woodward that the President of the United States has admitted on tape in February he knew about COVID-19 that had passed through the air. He knew how deadly it was. It was much more deadly than the flu. He knew and purposely played it down. Worse, he lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He had the information. He knew how dangerous it was. Now, while this deadly disease ripped through our nation, he failed to do his job on purpose. It was a life and death betrayal of the American people. Experts say that if he had acted just 1 week sooner, 36,000 people would have been saved. If he acted 2 weeks sooner, back in March, 54,000 lives would have been spared in March and April alone. You know, his failure has not only cost lives, it sent our economy in a tailspin. It cost millions more in American livelihoods. This is a recession created by Donald Trump's negligence, and he is unfit for this job as a consequence of it. How many schools aren't open right now? How many kids are starting the new school year the same way they ended the last one, at home? How many parents feel abandoned and overwhelmed? How many frontline workers are exhausted and pushed to their limits? And how many families are missing loved ones at their dinner table tonight because of his failures? It's beyond despicable. It's a dereliction of duty. It's a disgrace.
Well, that's how you come out swinging. Scott Bolden, final comment.
Yeah, let's not forget about the impact of his lies on this economy. 14 million people unemployed, businesses shut down that may never come back, the impact on small businesses, and a economic depression, all caused by him playing down or calling this a hoax. When I first heard the tape, I thought about what Donald Trump said. He said, I could shoot somebody on New York Avenue or Fifth Avenue and they still support me. But we're going to see whether they still support him with a hand in over 200,000 deaths because of his lies to the American people. I hope Democrats and good Republicans and independents make him dead wrong about this one, because this one has not only had a devastating impact on the economy, but on family members and the lives of those who have lost due to COVID-19. This is just really, really bad. Really bad.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just 1 moment. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. What do you make of the CDC director saying a vaccine is not going to be ready for the American public until 2021? Donald Trump has a news conference that comes out and says, oh, no, he was mistaken. The CDC director was mistaken. It's going to be ready in a month or so.
Yeah. So the vaccine trials are still underway. And my understanding of what these vaccine companies are doing, concurrent with studying these drugs, they are producing doses of the vaccine. That is atypical. Typically, a vaccine is studied, it is checked for efficacy, meaning does it cause an immune response? Does it protect the people who received it? It's checked for safety, right? Do people have bad side effects? Are they terrible side effects? Are they side effects that we can accept? Like, what's the risk versus the benefit of receiving the vaccine? And if the benefit far outweighs the risk and you're not endangering people by giving the vaccine, then you go into production. Now the vaccines are starting to be produced, but you will need billions and billions of doses of this vaccine to protect the population worldwide. And it takes months to produce a vaccine, even when the studies are successful and tell you that the vaccines work. So he's really speaking lies. I'm going to just stay on the path that you're on, lies. He's saying things that are not scientifically possible, but that's what happens when you jump out of your lane. He needs to let the experts speak so that we can receive the truth and so that people continue to do the right thing. Giving people false hope, telling people to let their guard down, making light of the situation is dangerous, and we are seeing the consequences of this over and over and over again.
Well, the expert did speak, but then he's contradicting the experts, and that's part of the problem. Doc, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, then. Back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just 1 moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. I want to talk about this other thing that happened in the debate, y'all, where Donald Trump brought up, just play the audio, y'all. This Lord.
The waiters?
The herd.
Waiters?
The herd. The herd. Do y'all have the video? Listen, watch this, y'all. Watch this.
Okay, and it is going away, and it's probably going to go away now a lot faster because of the vaccine. It would go away without the vaccine, George, but it's going to go away a lot faster with it.
It would go away without the vaccine?
Sure, over a period of time. Sure, with time it goes
And many
away.
deaths.
And you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen. That will all happen. But with the vaccine, I think it will go away very quickly.
Got to take a quick
break. I really believe we're rounding the corner, and I believe that's strong.
As you know, Dr. Fauci disagrees with that.
Well, I mean, but a lot of people do agree with me.
See, that's what you asked him. Who?
Let me bring up Dr. Alexia Gaffney, an infectious disease expert. Doc, this fool just said, even with the vaccine, it's just gonna go away. Viruses just don't go away.
No, they don't, Roland. I mean, if you're going to jump out of your lane, at least speak the right language. It's not herd mentality, it's herd immunity. And it would take for at least 70% of the United States population, you're talking about 200 million people, to become naturally infected with COVID or vaccinated in order for us to gain or develop herd immunity. But the problem is talking about natural herd immunity means that you're just willing to risk more than the approaching 200,000 American lives we've already lost in order to achieve herd immunity. The virus is not just going to go away.
I want you to hold that point. That was a guy, he sent a tweet out, and he, let me switch. I want to show this, y'all. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, because on this whole notion of herd immunity. This is what he, hopefully I can show it. This guy, Kyle Felster. Kyle is he's a breaking news editor at CNN. This is what he said. There are approximately 328.2 million people in the United States. To get the low end of herd immunity, about 60% of the population must catch COVID. That's about 196,920 cases. The current U.S. death rate is about 2.96%. So that means in order to achieve herd immunity, we would have to accept 5,836,679 deaths.
Unacceptable.
So is that calculation correct, that we would have to, so to accept herd immunity, we would also have to accept not just the COVID infections, but the COVID deaths that come from herd immunity?
And that's a conservative number, in terms of the number of
5.8 million.
I'm calling it conservative because if you had that many deaths, imagine how many people are going to require hospitalization. We didn't see peak numbers of COVID all over the United States at the exact same time, but where we had hotspots and epicenters, our health systems were overwhelmed. If we stop everything, we don't do anything to prevent the spread of the virus in a ridiculous attempt to achieve natural herd immunity, we will completely overwhelm our healthcare systems, and we will lose even more American people as a result of this virus, way more than that number is predicting, because that number is based on perfect circumstances. Being able to treat those that need to be hospitalized, being able to give everyone who needs it critical care. And we already saw what could happen when our systems become overwhelmed. That is not something that we want to see happening nationwide simultaneously.
This is, so first of all, just explain this herd immunity. There are a number of people who keep saying that's the only way we can do this. They also are suggesting that if you do herd immunity, that once you get it, you can't get it again. That's not true.
No, it's not true that once you get the virus, you can't get it again. Probably a small proportion of people who have been infected will get reinfected, but the reality is we don't know. This is our first time dealing with COVID-19. It's a brand new infection, even though we are 8 months in terms of our knowledge of this virus, but there's still a lot to learn as things progress and evolve. So the concept of herd immunity is that if the majority of your population is immune to an infection that is communicable or contagious from person to person, whether that immunity comes naturally or whether that immunity comes via a vaccination, then you protect the overall population or community or herd, because with less and less individuals susceptible to the infection, then the people who haven't been vaccinated and the people who haven't had the infection are protected because you stop the spread or propagation of the infection. So that number needs to be around 70%. But we already talked about how many lives would be at stake if we allow 200 plus million Americans to become sick with this infection. So we need to continue our social distancing. We need to continue to isolate. We need to continue to wear our masks. We need to continue hand hygiene. We need to continue to avoid large crowds. Everything that we have been doing up until now needs to continue, and it will need to continue even when we have a vaccine available for some time. I
gotta ask you about this here. The CDC director, Robert Redfield, testified today about the importance of masks. This is what he had to say.
Go so far as to say that this face mask is more guaranteed to protect me against COVID than when I take a COVID vaccine, because the immunogenicity may be 70%. And if I don't get an immune response, the vaccine's not going to protect me. This face mask will. I might even go so
Doc,
far as to say that.
Your thoughts about that? What he just said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is a mask better than a vaccine? It's comparing apples to oranges. We still will need to continue to take the isolation and social distance precautions, even when people begin to get vaccinated, because the reality is not everyone is going to get vaccinated, and there's no such thing as a perfect vaccine. So if you're talking about only a particular proportion of the population getting vaccinated and then the vaccine having efficacy or protecting 70% of the people who receive it, there's still some significant gaps that we need to keep in mind. And so we will still need to continue to wear our mask. Nothing in this pandemic situation is a get out of jail free card. So we really just have to be vigilant, and we have to let this thing, in a sense, run its course, but not run its course like take off your mask, go do what you will, return back to life, and see where the cards fall. That's not what we're talking about here. It really needs to be a mass effort, and it needs to be a concerted effort. Everybody needs to be doing the same thing to protect themselves as well as protect one another from the spread of this infection.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. We have crossed the 200,000 death threshold in this country. More than 7 million people have been infected as a result. The Trump administration pretty much wants to say, y'all, this is all good. These things are just moving along. The majority of our deaths have occurred within the 3 months. On average, over 1,000 people died every single day. Now, nearly 4 months later, the country has doubled that figure. As of Sunday evening, again, the official death toll has surpassed 200,000, the highest death toll in the world. Some experts think the numbers could double before the end of the year, bringing the death toll up to 600,000. Joining us right now is virologist Dr. Cindy Duke. Dr. Duke, I'm sitting here looking at, again, a lot of the people, these critics out here, people who say we're hyping this thing up, who say, oh, this thing is leveling off, that it's dissipating and disappearing. As a virologist, are you seeing that?
Unfortunately, no, we're not seeing that. We're seeing in some pockets of the United States where people have taken the precautions seriously, where people are wearing masks, where people are following those guidelines, we are seeing things plateau. But we're still seeing really high numbers in many other places where people are being very complacent with their strategies for protection, wearing masks when they feel like it or not at all. People are taking unnecessary and undue risks at this point in many parts of the country. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is, yes, the United States now accounts for greater than almost 25% of the deaths from COVID-19 globally. One country of almost 200 countries in the world, this one country accounts for 1/4 of the deaths.
So again, the people who say, hey, look, it's no big deal. We also about to go into winter. What must we be preparing for with that? Mm-hmm. Because now you're talking about mixing COVID and flu, mixing COVID and pneumonia. Please talk about that.
We are entering what is traditionally our respiratory virus season. And so that means now things are getting even murkier in the sense of when someone starts having symptoms, what is it that they're having symptoms of? Is it COVID? Is it influenza? If it's a child, is it, RSV? What are we coping with here? And so, the first thing to tell everyone is really, 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 we should be wearing a mask. And this isn't something that's up for debate anymore. It's very well proven, very well established that masks save lives. And I know some people are going to say, well, I know the one person who wore a mask and still got COVID. Sure, one person. But you know what? If we don't all wear a mask, hundreds, thousands of us will become positive and spread it to even more people. Now, that said, I would also like to encourage everyone to get their flu shot. This year, more than ever, we need to get our flu shots. The big issue about, flu season coming and why everyone's so worried, particularly healthcare providers like myself, is our hospitals are still overwhelmed with COVID-19 and all the other things that people go to the hospital for. With flu season comes a surge and a need for the same resources that COVID-19 patients also have to use at the hospitals. And so the fewer people who have the flu who end up sick and need to go to the hospital, the better. And so it's really important that everyone out there take these steps and take it seriously, right? And in the communities of color across the nation, it's especially important that we have our children vaccinated, that our teenagers are vaccinated, our elderly are vaccinated. We need flu vaccine drives just as much as we're doing drives to get people tested, to encourage people to wear masks when it comes to COVID-19. We need them to get their flu shots as well.
All right, then. Well, Dr. Cindy Duke, look, we certainly hope people take that advice. Take this thing seriously. It is still real. We want them to understand that. So we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, then. All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. When Joe Biden did speak about the issue of vaccines today, this is what he had to say in his news conference.
Long briefing with 7 of our nation's top public health experts on the state of the pandemic, the steps we need to curb the spread of the virus, and the challenges of distributing a safe and effective vaccine once one is identified. Before I turn to those issues, let me say a few words about the President's comments last night. Even before acknowledging to Bob Woodward on tape that he was fully informed on the gravity of the danger related to COVID-19, he refused to warn the American people. Again, last night in television town hall, the President revealed in no uncertain terms the lack of seriousness with which he continues to take this pandemic. Nearly 8 months after this crisis, on the doorstep of 200,000 American deaths, President Trump has refused once again to take responsibility or to take action. By his own admission, he continued to lie about COVID-19. He doubled down on the catastrophic mistakes that he's made. And perhaps, worst of all, he made clear that he still doesn't have a plan to bring us out of this crisis. He even said, and I quote, "A lot of people think that masks are not good. undercutting the easiest, most effective means we have for reducing the spread of this disease. This virus is still taking nearly 1,000 lives a day. The forecasts show that those numbers are likely to climb this winter. But incredibly, Donald Trump insists that he wouldn't have done anything differently. Not one thing. Last Friday, we learned that another one of the thousands of Americans died due to this virus, and it continues to rise. And on the very same day that we reported 1,000 deaths on Friday, and the very same day, Canada reported that not one person died of COVID-19 in Canada. Trump wouldn't have done anything differently? If you're a parent in America, preparing for another day that your child can't attend school, if you're grieving the loss of a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, husband or wife, if you're a small business owner who's on the brink of total bankruptcy, who can't open or can't go back to work because the virus still is spreading in your community, how does it make you feel to hear the president say he wouldn't have done anything differently? And if he gets 4 more years, why should we expect anything to change? All the president had to offer last night, President Trump, was the same weak and feckless inaction, the same lies and empty promises that we've seen from the very beginning. He still won't accept any responsibility. He still won't offer a plan. And last night, he repeated what he said so many times before, that even if he continues to offer only failing indifference, someday the virus is going to go away by a miracle. Even if he does nothing, it's going to go away by a miracle. It won't go away like a miracle. In fact, even if we get a vaccine, will not be available for most populations until well into the 2021. You know, so we're heading into a very dangerous autumn. The fact that the University of Washington model, which the White House has previously touted, projects that cases and deaths are going to spike this November and an additional by 215,000 Americans, they say, are going to die. Began the spike in November, but by the first of the year, 215,000 will be dead, additional. That's more than have already died. We need leadership right now to prevent that from happening. The same university model shows, the University of Washington model, shows that if there's universal masking, these deaths could be, projected deaths could be cut in half.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. This is Joe Biden speaking today in Michigan, touting the Obama administration saving the auto industry. and he did weigh in on this subject.
On the day that we hit 190,000 dead in the United States because of COVID-19, we just learned from the Washington Post columnist Bob Woodward that the President of the United States has admitted on tape in February he knew about COVID-19 that had passed through the air. He knew how deadly it was. It was much more deadly than the flu. He knew and purposely played it down. Worse, he lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He had the information. He knew how dangerous it was. And while this deadly disease ripped through our nation, he failed to do his job on purpose. It was a life and death betrayal of the American people. Experts say that if he had acted just 1 week sooner, 36,000 people would have been saved. If he acted 2 weeks sooner, back in March, 54,000 lives would have been spared in March and April alone. You know, his failure has not only cost lives, it sent our economy in a tailspin. It cost millions more in American livelihoods. This is a recession created by Donald Trump's negligence, and he is unfit for this job as a consequence of it. How many schools aren't open right now? How many kids are starting the new school year the same way they ended the last one, at home? How many parents feel abandoned and overwhelmed? How many frontline workers are exhausted and pushed to their limits? And how many families are missing loved ones at their dinner table tonight because of his failures? It's beyond despicable. It's a dereliction of duty. It's a disgrace.
Well, that's how you come out swinging. Scott Bolden, final comment.
Yeah, you know, let's not forget about the impact of his lies on this economy. 14 million people unemployed, businesses shut down that may never come back, the impact on small businesses, and a economic depression, all caused by him playing down or calling this a hoax. You know, when I first heard the tape, I thought about what Donald Trump said. He said, I could shoot somebody on New York Avenue or Fifth Avenue and they still support me. But we're going to see whether they still support him with a hand in over 200,000 deaths because of his lies to the American people. I hope Democrats and good Republicans and independents make him dead wrong about this one, because this one has not only had a devastating impact on the economy, but on family members and the lives of those who have lost due to COVID-19. This is just really, really bad. Really bad.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. You want to support Roland Mark Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. You may have seen this viral video that has been spreading. A group of doctors who came to Washington, D.C., brought here by Tea Party activists in Texas, that contains a ton of misleading information about the coronavirus. But as you expect, it has gotten huge numbers. More than 13 million people viewed this video before it was pulled from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It was created by, it was really sent out by the folks at Breitbart. They covered this event, the right-wing website. And again, it includes this black doctor. And it shows a group of people dressed in white lab coats, calling themselves America's frontline doctors. They held a news conference outside the U.S. Supreme Court in D.C. In the video, they claim that the anti-malaria drug hydrochloroquine is a cure for COVID, and you don't need a mask to slow the spread of the virus. But the FDA last month ended the emergency use authorization of chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, saying the drugs were unlikely to be effective in treating COVID-19. Masks are also widely accepted to be a reliable safety measure that helps to reduce the spread of the virus. Again, this is what happens in terms of all of these conspiracy theories that are running out here, Michael, and people latch on to this. You've got people out there who are saying it's a hoax, forget it, I'm not wearing a mask. There's a reason it continues to spread, and I keep warning people. The Spanish flu lasted 2 years. 500 million people worldwide were infected. Anywhere from 17 to 50 million died because of it. If you look at these people here, and not only this video, but of course you had Plandemic. Sinclair was set to air this on all of their stations. They're the largest TV station group in the country, but because of the protests and the outrage, it was pulled. This is the kind of nonsense, and you got a significant number of people who buy into the conspiracies. To hear people even saying that this is a hoax. So we're joking about 151,000 people dying. We're joking about the funerals that actually took place. That's a huge problem in this country.
It is. And, you know, there's no reason in the world not to wear a mask. Frankly, I think we're probably going to be wearing masks certainly through the rest of this year and possibly.
Oh, not possibly. Not possibly. Not possibly. Okay, I'm saying it again. Spanish flu lasted 2 years. Y'all, we're only 6 months into this. I'm telling you right now, you might as well get ready. We're going to be wearing masks until 2022.
Easy. And it's going, even if the vaccine does come in early next year, there aren't going to be 350 million doses to take care of everybody. And that's just here in this country, having nothing to do around the world. So it's going to take a minute. There's no reason not to wear a mask. And frankly, I don't know how, one of the ways to deter people, and I don't know about, 45 supporters, they may never wear masks just on GP. But for other folks, you can give them a dirty look because all they're doing, I understand, oh, I'm not going to get it, but you could give it to somebody else that you care about. And that's the point. So why not put the mask on? If we're inconvenienced for a couple of years, better for our country than worse.
Kelly, the other issue is this here. Even if you get a vaccine, these crazies are going to say, I'm not going to take it. Hell, they already won't wear a mask.
The fact that being well has been politicized to this extent is baffling to me. It should not be a political issue to be healthy, to follow health guidelines, to follow a doctor's order, several doctor's orders. It is insane to me, the fact that as a country we are this narcissistic, this self-centered, this just ignorant overall of knowledge, because it's out there. Like, actual knowledge is out there that has been given to us for months on how to combat this virus, how to protect yourself, how to not infect anybody else. And at the end of the day, with all that information, it all boils down to putting a piece of cloth over your face so that you don't breathe on somebody. It does not make sense that a piece of cloth has been politicized to the point of even further polarizing our community, our country. When it comes to our health, it does not make sense. And with these videos that have come out, like Pandemic and the one that you just mentioned, all it takes is going to a trusted news source that has already been vetted time and time again to disprove to you, to disabuse you of the notion that any of the stuff in these videos are true. And yet we are so hungry for something larger than just wearing a mask. We are so hungry for the conspiracy. We are so hungry for the big thing. But it's really simple. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Stay home. It does not make sense that these things are hard for you. It shouldn't be.
Here's what's crazy, Mustafa. One of the doctors, this woman named Stella Emanuel out of Houston. Go to my iPad, please. Daily Beast has this story. Donald Trump has actually retweeted this video. Donald Trump Jr. has called it a must-watch video. You even have Jack Del Rio, NFL coach, saying, hey, this all makes sense. This woman here, this is crazy. This woman here has said sexual visitations by demons and alien DNA are the root of America's common health concerns. That right there says all I need to know.
Well, I don't know if these folks ever took the Hippocratic Oath, which means do no harm. You know, Trump has continued to surround himself with doctors who would say and do whatever he wanted. People remember early on with his physical and people talking about a person who is significantly overweight, somewhat more elder, being in the condition of a 20-year-old. So we're used to this type of stuff. But folks have to take some own personal responsibility, along with our government officials, of course, have responsibility in telling the truth and making sure that folks are protected. Trump feeds off of people's desperation. He always has. You see it play out in all of the policies that he manipulates and that he tries to put forward, on the rare occasion that he actually puts forward any policy. So, you know, and it gets so frustrating as somebody who comes from both an environmental and a public health background, because some of the things that they tout, you know, when we talk about hydroxy, you know, we know that it causes liver toxicity. It's been studied for a long time. So to tell people that it's safe to go out there and utilize it, knowing, one, that is a serious problem, along with the cardiac related things that are also associated with it, shows, one, that this administration continues to play with people's lives. They play with people's lives when they tell folks you don't have to wear a mask, or even when they don't say it, but when they don't do it, you know, when they do a number of other things of pulling people, you know, into these small spaces with multiple folks being there. And then, of course, you know, the actions that we've seen when they try and get some political traction by having events and then the spread that happens from those events. So the reality is they don't care about people. They don't really care about Republican brothers and sisters either, although they continue to try and pump that into them. And they definitely don't care about, you know, black and brown people across this country.
Well, that is certainly the case. It is just total craziness here. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends, go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. According to the CDC today, there are 4,405,932 cases of COVID-19 in the United States. A total of 150,283 patients have died. Now, this spring, a team working under Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, produced a plan for an aggressive, coordinated national COVID-19 testing plan that was supposed to have brought the pandemic under control. After assembling a team that came up with this plan, Kushner then decided, okay, we're just going to scrap it. Now, today on Capitol Hill, you, of course, had all of the drama on Capitol Hill. You were dealing with Dr. Anthony Fauci testifying, and then Jim Jordan was his, usual making an ass out of himself. And so just listen to some of the back and forth that was going on in this hearing. Go ahead, y'all.
Do protests increase the spread of the virus?
Do protests increase the spread of the virus? I think I can make a general statement.
Well, 500,000 protesters on June 6th alone. Yeah. I'm just asking that number of people. Does it increase the spread of the virus?
Crowding together, particularly when you're not wearing a mask, contributes to the spread of the virus.
Should we limit the protesting?
I'm not sure what you mean. How do we say limit the protesting?
Should government limit the protesting?
I don't think that's relevant to.
Well, you just said if it increases the spread of the virus. I'm just asking, should we limit it?
Well, I'm not in a position to determine what the government can do in a forceful way.
Well, you make all kinds of recommendations. You make comments on dating, on baseball, on everything you can imagine. I'm just asking you just said that protests increase the spread. I'm just asking you, should we try to limit the protests?
No, I think I would leave that to people who have more of a position to do that. I can tell you.
Government stopping people from going to church, Dr. Fauci?
Yeah.
Last week in the Calvary Chapel case, 5 liberals on the Supreme Court said it was okay for Nevada to limit church services. Justice Gorsuch said it best. He said there's no world in which the Constitution permits Nevada to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. I'm just asking, is there a world where the Constitution says you can favor one First Amendment liberty, protesting, over another, practicing your faith?
I'm not favoring anybody over anybody. I'm just making a statement that's a broad statement that avoid crowds of any type, no matter where you are, because that leads to the acquisition and transmission. And I don't judge one crowd versus another crowd. When you're in a crowd, particularly if you're not wearing a mask, that induces the spread.
It's a simple question, doctor. Should we limit the protests? Government is obviously limiting people going to church. And look, there's been no violence that I can see at church. I haven't seen people during a church service go out and harm police officers or burn buildings. But we know that, for 63 days.
Rob, you're from Ohio. There's nothing like it. Jim Jordan's one of the biggest asses on Capitol Hill. Here's what's interesting about Jim Jordan's question. Should government limit protests? Government actually can't limit protests. The reason Fauci is making the statement is that actually people are assembling on their own. What government does, what government can do, like for instance, when government says we're closing the beaches, okay, government actually can't say, no, we're taking tickets. There are only going to be 50 people at this protest. That's really what Fauci was saying. Fauci was saying, see, Jordan wanted him to say no protest. That's what he said. He said, I'm saying no mass groups.
No, he made it clear. And Jim Jordan is he's an asshole. I don't know, he's a lot of things, but he shouldn't be in office. And you would point out to me, he is from Ohio. I don't claim him, though. And some people do. He got elected somehow. I don't know. But he is trying to set up this false narrative. He's trying to get his base say they're trying to take away your right to go to church while they go out there and protest for crazy things like making sure black people's lives matter and don't get killed. And they're trying to rile up their base and set up like the government is trying to stop you from exercising your right, but letting those people exercise their right. We know what they're doing. And, you know, we have to make sure people get out, vote, and end not only Trump, but Trumpism, which stands for this, which stands for dividing people along race, that says our lives doesn't matter. That's, you know, I'm sure you talked about this. The current president occupant of the White House said he wants to delay the election. They want to just make up new rules. That's what they want to do.
Lauren, again, you're sitting here, and I'm looking at all these conservatives on social media. Oh, Fauci, he wouldn't say the words. He wouldn't say the words. The man said there should not be mass gathering of people anywhere because that is helping to spread the disease.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say, right? We're sitting here with 152,000 Americans dead in a pandemic. We have some of the worst rates of infection and death on the planet. Anthony Fauci has been a doctor his entire life, obviously worked on the AIDS crisis, obviously a renowned physician. And unfortunately, as part of his job, he has to sit and listen to stupid, inane questions by idiots that get elected to Congress from people who are dumb enough to vote for them. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to watch. It's particularly embarrassing and dangerous when we have, you know, over 1 million people infected and over 152,000 dead and counting. And we don't know when that count ends. And so it's shameful, really. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than Jim Jordan and his idiot friends. You know, it's just stupid. The fact that, you know, you want to reroute the narrative, you want to make a YouTube tape for yourself, for your constituents to look at, or for you to put on your website, and that has become the reason that you sit in Congress. That has become the reason that you are questioning a physician is trying to save lives in this country and waste everybody's time, waste that physician's time, waste precious time off the clock as people are dying. It doesn't get any more embarrassing. It doesn't get any more stupid. I do think we're probably going to see some sort of a wave election on November 3rd, because at some point, you know, people have had enough. And when you have 40 million people who file for unemployment and this many people dead, maybe perhaps this is the moment. One could only hope so, because I don't know what else can happen to convince some of these people to stop voting for these idiots to come into Congress and sit and ask dumbass questions.
So hold on. So Derek, I'm about to show another idiot. This is really funny. So this guy, Blaine.
Why are these people idiots and Democrats not?
No, because no, I'm about to, wait, because I'm about to explain to you. So here's a guy, Representative Blaine Luetkemeyer, whatever it is. He's a farmer. He later owned a bank and worked as an insurance agent. And so Fauci, who's a doctor, they're talking about hydrochloroquine. Listen to this exchange.
Things you made a comment a while ago with regards to hydroxychloroquine, and I have an article here that quotes the Henry Ford Health System, who did an extensive study on hydroxychloroquine, and they say that it significantly reduces the death rate of COVID patients. The study was highly analyzed by peer-reviewed, unlike many other studies, and quoting the executive officer said, as doctors and scientists, we look at the data for insight, and the data here is clear. There was a benefit to using the drug as a treatment for sick and hospitalized patients. And in talking with a lot of older doctors who have been around a while, and I trust their judgment and their use of hydroxychloroquine, they say that the initial studies didn't really use zinc with it, and they say that zinc is an enabler to be able to help hydroxychloroquine actually do its job of going after and reducing deaths in patients. Had a long conversation with a doctor earlier in the week, and he said, yes, as long as zinc is there, it really definitely does work. Without it, it's minimally effective. Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you for that opportunity to comment. The Henry Ford Hospital study that was published was a non-controlled retrospective cohort study that was confounded by a number of issues, including the fact that many of the people who were receiving hydroxychloroquine were also receiving corticosteroids, which we know from another study gives a clear benefit in reducing deaths with advanced disease. So that study is a flawed study, and I think anyone who examines it carefully is that it is not a randomized placebo-controlled trial.
It's peer-reviewed.
It doesn't matter. You can peer review something that's a bad study, but the fact is it is not a randomized placebo-controlled trial. the point that I think is important, because we all want to keep an open mind, any and all of the randomized placebo-controlled trials, which is the gold standard of determining if something is effective, none of them had shown any efficacy for hydroxychloroquine.
Derek, he's like, but it's peer reviewed.
Well, first of all, I'm baffled and don't understand at what point, when in history, have peer reviews not been taken seriously?
Because the point. No, hold on. You said when? The point that Fauci was stating is.
The second thing I want to ask is.
Hold on. You asked the first one. Let's answer it. Hold on. You asked the first one. Hold on. Wait. You asked the first one. Can we answer the first one before you go to the second one?
No, I'm not finished.
No, wait. Hold on. No. You said. And
I said second. Let me finish.
Hold up. We're gonna answer the first one, and then you can ask the second one. So to answer,
that's how I want to do it.
Well, that's how I want to do it. Derek, that's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna answer one question. Derek. It's like when I have two questions. I ask the first one, get an answer to it, then I ask the second one. Well, right? No, but that's actually how hosts do it. So here's the deal. So no. So you asked, no. Of course we're gonna do it my way. So you asked. How is it a peer review? So here's it. No. I'm gonna bring all three of you in. You asked peer review.
No, you asked me a question.
Fauci answered it. He said just because it's. Hold on. This is the deal. This is just real simple. I'm gonna play again Fauci's answer. I want you to listen. No, I want you to listen to it. Hold up. You asked, when do we not pay attention to peer review? Fauci answered it. Folks, press play. Press play, folks.
That's Fauci.
Press play.
For that opportunity to comment. The Henry Ford Hospital study that was published was a non-controlled retrospective cohort study that was confounded by a number of issues, including the fact that many of the people who were receiving hydroxychloroquine were also receiving corticosteroids, which we know from another study gives a clear benefit in reducing deaths with advanced disease. So that study is a flawed study, and I think anyone who examines it carefully is that it is not a randomized placebo-controlled trial.
It says it was peer-reviewed.
It doesn't matter. You can peer review something that's a bad study, but the fact is it is not a randomized placebo-controlled.
Okay, so Derek, he just said you can
let me finish.
He can say you can peer review a bad study. That answers your question.
Next thing I was going to say, if I can ever finish on your show.
Go ahead.
Everybody on this panel has, didn't agree with their doctor and we got a second opinion. Why the hell does Dr. Fauci got to be the end all to be all? We can get a second opinion because there are other doctors who disagree with Dr. Fauci. And they have PhDs just like him, and they're not wrong for disagreeing with Dr. Fauci.
I got a question for you.
I'm not wrong for disagreeing with what y'all have to say.
Actually, if we're stating facts and you're not stating facts, then you can be wrong. But Rob, here's the deal. Rob, here's the deal. This is the person who is head of the what? NIH. This is the person who. Well, of course you don't care, but this is the person. This is the person who. No, he's just not just a doctor. There's like he's not that. Rob, he's just not that crazy woman down in Texas who believed in demon sperm and demon DNA. No, and so no, it's actually it's not my opinion. It's my opinion, but also if I hold up Fauci and the crazy sister in Texas, I'm probably not going to listen to the crazy sister in Texas who says there is demon sperm. Rob, go ahead. Rob, go ahead. Rob, go ahead. Rob is talking.
Not much of a different opinion when it comes to this. There are things that we know, and unfortunately, the right has become an exercise in stupidity. Like, who can be dumbest the fastest? We're arguing science. We're arguing that.
Rob is talking. Rob is talking. Finish your point, then I'll go to another guest. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're arguing if the Earth spins. We're arguing if the Earth is flat. Like they're arguing facts. It's not about saying, Dr. Fauci is the end-all be-all. Dr. Fauci is talking about how science works, and what Republicans are trying to do is pretend just like you do with climate change, like, oh, that doesn't exist, and that's just made up. No, these are facts. Like 99% of doctors agree, and people that are looking at the facts and reasoning, not trying to make a president look not bad because he's a fool. And because Dr. Fauci is doing his job and you have an incompetent White House, these people are doing everything possible to deflect and blame things on Dr. Fauci because you have an incompetent person in the White House. Like, we need to just follow science. We could have saved a lot more people had we not just followed science.
One second, I'm bringing Lauren in. Lauren, this is the thing. Lauren, this is the thing for me that is quite interesting. So when you hear Fauci talk about controlled, when you hear him talk about placebo, he's talking about how doctors and scientists actually properly assess drugs. He's laying out protocol. Excuse me, the member of Congress, Lauren, he's like, yeah, but it's peer review. He's like, yeah, but they didn't follow the traditional protocols that you go through. Lauren, go ahead. Yeah, so last I checked, Anthony Fauci is an immunologist. He's a doctor, went to medical school. Last I checked, Jim Jordan's a wrestling coach. Now, if you want to argue whether or not today is Friday, that's fine. You want to argue whether or not today is, the day in July, that's fine. But if we stick to facts, I think I'm going to trust a doctor that has like a medical degree before any of these members of Congress, to the exclusion of some of the doctors in Congress who are very smart. But, we've watched Rand Paul, who's a physician as well, ask some of the dumbest questions of Anthony Fauci in committee. I mean, at some point, you have to get serious when, like I said, 150,000 people are dead. This is not a situation, this is an unprecedented situation with people dying by the tens of thousands. And we've got members of Congress that want to play games in a hearing with the top physician on this issue so that they can make a little video for themselves to turn on their base for the election. Like I said, it's shameful, it's embarrassing, and I think that the Republican Party is going to pay a huge price this November. And that's why you see things like the Lincoln Project, because half the party has figured out we can't continue to be this stupid in public. And hopefully that bears some fruit on Election Day. This is why you got the president trying to steal the election with his nonsense, because he knows it's coming. And all the polls and all the indicators indicate that, in fact, we are going to have a realignment in November. All right. So I do want, I'm going to let Derek respond. I want to play this soundbite from Congressman Jim Clyburn from today's hearing before I do so. Go.
Can you help us understand why? While Europe has largely contained the virus, the United States has seen a continued rise in new cases.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The answer to that question is really somewhat complex, but I'll try maybe to very briefly go through what I believe are at least some of the factors that were involved. If you look at what happened in Europe when they shut down or locked down or went to shelter in place, however you want to describe it, they really did it to the tune of about 95+% of the country did that. When you actually look at what we did, even though we shut down, even though it created a great deal of difficulty, we really functionally shut down only about 50% in the sense of the totality of the country, which means when we reached our peak, as they did, they came down almost to a low baseline, as you've shown very clearly. But take a look at what happened to our baseline. We came up, down, and then we plateaued at about 20,000 cases a day. So we started off with a very difficult baseline of transmission that was going on at the time that we tried to open up the country. And when we opened up the country, what we saw, particularly most recently in the southern states, was an increase of cases to 20, 30, 40, 50, and a couple of weeks ago it was up to 70,000 per day, and now it's down between 50 and 60. And the reasons for that are complex. There were some states that did it very well, and there are some states that did not. And when I say did not, I mean, we put out, as Ranking Member Scalise mentioned, the guidelines of a gateway, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Some were followed very carefully and some were not.
Derek, the reason I thought that was important because every time we hear Donald Trump talk, he's like, oh, we're doing great. We're doing great, but way better than Europe. Oh, we have tested more. We're doing more. So why are we still seeing 60 and 70,000 cases? That's leadership. That's leadership. That's leadership. And unfortunately, because you asked earlier, why is this political? Because part of the problem is that where we're seeing the skyrocketing cases in states led by Republican governors who are refusing to listen to the doctors.
I don't know if that's the case in every state, Roland. You know, different. They look. They laid it out. Initially, the states were like, "Oh, we don't want the federal government involved. We want to do it ourselves." So it's like, okay, we'll come up with a plan.
Actually, that's not what the states
do. Don't never get to finish my statement.
But that's a factually incorrect statement.
What is incorrect?
The states actually said we're looking for the federal government to lead, and then when Donald Trump said, "Hey, this y'all problem," they were like, "Well, damn, we got to figure this amongst ourselves." That's actually what happened.
So the states are rolled out the plan, Roland. Did they not?
No.
Did the states roll out the plan?
No, the states. No. The states said, federal government, where is the national plan? Donald Trump was like, yo, this on y'all. And the states then, different states and regions got together and said, since he is not going to lead, we have...
Listen to you.
No. But you said, they then said, we...
Listen to you, bro.
No, you just said something that's just factually incorrect. You said the states rolled their plan out. The states rolled their plan out after the federal government refused to implement a national plan. They had no choice. And the problem was, it wasn't all states. Most of your southern states were like, nope, no to mask mandates. Nope, we're not going to shut everything down. Nope, we're not going to do widespread testing because they were all following Donald Trump's lead.
Correct.
So what happened? In May...
Here's my thing. If y'all have all the answers, let me put you in contact with some folks. Because y'all have all the answers.
No.
And if y'all got all the answers, y'all been keeping them to yourself.
No, actually.
Let me put you in contact with some folks.
Actually, the people you want to put us in.
Y'all got all the answers.
Actually,
these people don't know what they're doing.
The people you want to put us in contact with ain't listening to their own experts.
Listen,
I'm trying to put you in contact because y'all got all the answers.
Doesn't know what Governor DeSantis doesn't know what he's doing.
All the answers.
Hold on. Derek, in May, Ron DeSantis stood in front of the media outside of the White House with Vice President Mike Pence and wagged his finger, and y'all said we were going to see spikes. And y'all said we were going to see deaths. And he was going on and on and on. He said, we haven't seen none of that. Y'all owe me an apology. 4 weeks later, spikes. Deaths, skyrocketing, and then it was
let me go out a day. In January, the president shut down travel from Europe.
Actually, he didn't.
Joe Biden said he was a xenophobe.
Actually, he didn't.
Remember that? Nancy Pelosi said, "Come on down to Chinatown."
No, Derek. Let me also give you a fact. Donald Trump gave an interview. No. Derek. Let me help you. Donald Trump gave an interview on CNBC. He said there's one person from China with it in America. A week later, he said, a week later, Donald Trump said, we have 15 cases in America. We'll soon be down to 0. That actually came out of his mouth. Right now, Derek, we have 152,000 dead.
Okay.
Well, y'all got
all the answers.
Rob, go ahead.
Hold on a second, Derek. We're not saying we have all the answers. We can just tell, we know it's Friday. We know it's Friday. We know some certain facts. And, no matter how much you might want to defend somebody because they're from your party, this guy is not doing a good job.
I'm not defending anyone, Ron.
Hold on.
I'm not defending anyone.
Hold on. Relax. All I'm saying is Trump. Wait a minute. Trump has done not only a bad job, he's done a horrible job. He's both incompetent and corrupt. And now he's put people's lives at risk just because he wanted to prove a political point. Honestly, had he been a normal president, he probably would have had a chance to pivot from this and show some leadership. A normal president would have taken the reins, would have said, this is our national response. He refused to do that. And then you have governors like Governor DeSantis, which he said, we're going to be you guys were saying that we were going to have all these deaths, just like Roland said. They have surpassed New York, surpassed them. We have fools leading us. We have the guy, the governor of Georgia, who is trying to get rid of mask mandates just to look good for Trump. Like, that's stupid. That's not. And so I want to say this: we do have a Republican governor here in Ohio who has rejected what Trump has done. He's not been perfect, but he's tried to actually go for the evidence. Here in Ohio, he's done that.
Same as a Republican governor in Maryland, Larry Hogan, because you have.
So it's not Republican. It's common sense.
Right. But
that's it.
Right. In fact, the governor of Alabama, Kay Ivey, she said, "No, we're gonna have a mask mandate. We're gonna close businesses down."
Y'all validated my point. Why is it gotta be political? That's all I was saying.
Because
you
most
got a Republican governor here,
because most
because why? I've been saying,
because
why
most
it gotta be political every time it's somebody else's mouth?
Because most of the stupid people who are making decisions are Republicans.
And they put us in this position. Let me say this, because hey, Derek.
Rob, 20 seconds, next story, go.
I'll be very quick. Like, wearing a mask became political because Trump said, I'm not going to go out and wear a mask. And then suddenly he wears a mask and now it's saving people's lives. Like, he should have done that from the beginning. It shouldn't be political. This is stupid.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. All right, folks, a lot of parents out here stressing about the coronavirus pandemic and how to keep themselves and their children safe. They're often missing depression among their children, not being able to spend time with their friends, not being able to enjoy their summer. Nicole Christian Brathwaite is an adult and child psychiatrist. She joins us right now. Nicole, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
So this is something that is one of those things that I think we don't pay attention to. Look, I had to deal with this with my nieces. One of them really feeling depressed because not being able to see friends, not being able to fly back home to see family, not being able to just to go out and enjoy being 16 years old. We're seeing this with young kids as well, and we're about to see it now with school coming back, because you're having people, a lot of young folks who are having to do online school, so their world was caught up in social interaction among their peers.
Right, exactly. I think especially for Black children, COVID-19 and racism. So our children are dealing with two pandemics. So they're dealing with the isolation of COVID-19, not being able to see their friends, not even having the physical contact of hugging their grandparents or hugging friends, and then not even having the social milestones and the educational milestones like graduation and prom. And our children are grieving. They're grieving the loss of the life that they once had and the life that they expected to have. And so it's not uncommon to see increased irritability and increased frustration and mood swings and even some regressed behaviors in our children, because this is frustrating and it is difficult.
So how then do we deal with that? Because you got parents on short fuse as well. Some have been laid off, hours cut. They're having to deal with a lot of the same issues their children are.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think we're all in a similar situation in that we're all struggling. And it's important to recognize that a lot of the loss, a lot of the experiences, both the loss, again, of the social milestones, but Black children are losing family, they're losing friends, their parents are losing jobs, and all of these experiences are quite traumatic. But then there's the racism, there's finally the nation waking up and being even willing to say the word racism. So Black children are now also having to be reminded of the racism that they have to live through on a daily basis. And, you know, all of us are struggling and managing this. So there are a few things that parents can do to both support themselves and to support their kids. One thing I always say to parents is talking and listening to our kids. I think as parents, we kind of assume that we know what our kids are going to say. So often we're listening to our kids, but we already have our answer keyed up. We already know how we're going to respond. And so I recommend using a technique called reflective listening. So actually listening to your kid, but not providing an answer, not providing a solution, but summarizing what they just told you. So it really encourages our children and tells them that we're listening. So if our kid is saying, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I didn't have prom, I'm annoyed that I can't see so-and-so, rather than providing a solution stating, wow, okay, so what it sounds like to me is that you are really angry about all the losses that you've experienced. And it also sounds like that you're frustrated that I'm not allowing you to go out like some of your other friends without a mask. I can't imagine how difficult that is. And I'm not offering any answers, but I'm letting you know I heard you. I'm able to identify the emotion that you're experiencing. And I am not trying to fix it, but I'm here to listen. And oftentimes our kids have a lot to say, but they don't feel heard. And so if we can start really practicing utilizing reflective listening, then we can even help our kids come up with a solution. And that is kind of another suggestion that I offer is giving kids power. Because one thing that trauma does, it takes away our power. It takes away our sense of control. And everyone right now can relate to, I feel like I can't control anything in my life right now. And kids feel that to a significantly higher degree. And so being able to provide our children with options and giving them a chance to choose and feel like they have agency or a say in their life is very empowering and can also help them not feel so frustrated.
So what you're saying is you shouldn't say, girl, sit your ass down as far as you go out here and get yourself killed because of COVID. That's what you're saying? Okay, I got it. All right. Let's questions from the panel. Kelly, go.
No, we can't do that as parents or children, rather.
Well.
No, I completely, you can't. But to Dr. Braithwaite, I believe that's how you say your name. For those out here who not necessarily are dealing with the acute depression and anxiety of this issue, because that for the most part is temporary, fingers crossed anyway. But for those children and even parents who are dealing with mental illnesses such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, what have you, can you use these same methods as a parent or as a child? And to piggyback off of that, the options that you were talking about, could you explain to the audience just some of the easy ones, no matter where you live?
Sure. So, I mean, thank you for bringing that up. I think it's important to establish that depression and mental illness is a major issue in the Black community. Right now, suicide is the third leading cause of death in Black children, especially Black boys. So our children were suffering pre-COVID. And just to acknowledge, racism is trauma. Racism is a risk factor for suicide. And so Black children, simply by existing in the United States, are at greater risk than other populations of experiencing mental health problems, experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, and experiencing suicidal thoughts. And our income doesn't change that. Actually, those of us who have full-time jobs or qualify for the middle income, actually our kids are at greater risk because they're more exposed to white populations. They're more likely to be in the minority and are at greater risk of suffering. And so absolutely, these are existing problems that are now just compounded because of all that's going on. In terms of can we use these solutions with kids who have ongoing mental health problems? Absolutely. Everyone needs to feel heard. Everyone needs to know that their pain is being acknowledged. Everyone needs to feel like the adults in their lives are listening. And so reflective listening is a skill that psychiatrists and therapists learn. It's therapy 101. Make sure people know that you're present. Make sure people know that you're being heard. In terms of offering options to kids, it's offering, so it's kind of like, well, what do you want for dinner? Do you want spaghetti or hot dogs? And then they say pizza. I would love if we could have pizza, but right now our choices are spaghetti or hot dog, and I would love for you to choose. I would love for you to help us decide what we're going to have for dinner. Or if a kid says, I want to go sleep over so-and-so's house, man, you know what? I understand that you really want to sleep over, and I bet it's incredibly frustrating, but what about visiting with them outside or having them come to our house and visit outside? what about one of those options? And that, they may still say that's not what I want. I can totally understand, but I value your opinion, and I really want to hear what you would choose and what you think would be the best option. And so, I even do this with couples counseling too, like make the husband feel like he had a choice when he really didn't. So still giving people the option and allowing them to feel like they have some say or some control. But ultimately, if kids really are struggling with depression, and if they're struggling with safety, are feeling unsafe, it goes beyond just having these conversations. You have to be willing to seek treatment. And so often in our communities, there's this stigma that depression equals weakness. And by no means is depression weakness. And so often we feel like we have to struggle. Black women, we feel like we have to be the strong Black woman, or men feel like they may not be able to show their emotion. But the fact is that we are all suffering. And if anything, our suffering actually leads to early death, and it leads to chronic disease. And so it's killing us not to address these things. If you go to my website, wellmindsconsulting.com, under resources, I have a couple handouts that I created. And one of them is a handout on COVID-19 resources. And it lists dozens of different resources, both for parents, because we have to care for ourselves, but also for our children, people we can contact, websites that have information, and suicide hotlines.
You know what? I gotta say this here before I go, Davon, for the next question. I ain't never heard y'all use a damn example, Doc, by saying, oh, well, make the woman seem like you listening to her, but then in the end, she gonna do what you want to do anyway. It's always make the man feel like he got power, but he really don't. See, yeah, oh, you thought I ain't pick up on that, huh? Yeah, I picked up on that. Davon, ask your question of Doc.
So, there are a lot of children that are going to have to experience education virtually. And I imagine that there are particular stressors that are unique to that experiences. Could you speak to that?
Sure, definitely. I recently read an article here in Massachusetts, where I'm based. They were looking at calls to DCF, and all of the calls to DCF about kids not attending virtual classes were from predominantly communities of color. And so it seems like teachers were calling DCF and filing for neglect against parents when their children weren't going online. And so one of the things that we have to deal with is just racism and bias in education. That exists within the school system day to day when kids are going, but that will continue to exist through the virtual world. And so one thing that we as parents and as supporters of our children have to do is advocate for ourselves and advocate for our kids, and also educating schools about filing for neglect against a parent because their kid didn't sign on is racist. But also, did you ever ask why they didn't sign on? Did you ever inquire as to what is going on in their household? Many kids don't live in a home that's conducive to being in a room alone. So if you live in a 1 or 2 bedroom home, you may not have the space to be alone and take class, or there may be 2 or 3 other kids who are trying to take class at the same time. And so it's really important that our schools, one, educate themselves about some of the challenges that our kids experience, but also stop relying on kind of racist tropes and stereotypes and going against our parents and making it more difficult for our children to succeed, rather than building equity, which means giving each student individually the tools that they need to be successful.
Last question. Malik.
All right. Yeah. So I think early on in this pandemic, there was some discussions, and then even to an extent, it was mocked, the idea that how this affects the psyche of people, going through something that we've never experienced before in our lifetime.
Who mocked you? We didn't mock you. We mocked you voting for Trump. We didn't mock you about that, but go ahead.
I'm not talking about me personally.
Okay, all right, go ahead. All right.
The conversation that when we were having conversations early on, even in reference to school closings, yes, everybody was really concerned about it, but the idea that kids, particularly Black kids, will suffer from things like depression. We've seen things like suicides. All of those things increase when you're dealing with these type of stressors. I was on a call just last week with Dr. Jonathan Shepard. He's out of Baltimore, another adult and child psychiatrist. And he was talking about some of these similar things. So my question to you is, as far as just our school system, we know what the APA said. the American Pediatrics Association said about the need for kids to go back to school, and it kind of backed off, and then they kind of went back in the different direction. But my question to you is, have you been in, and I know it's a little difficult maybe with funding or something, but are you finding in your profession that schools or districts are reaching out to people like you? Fortunately for me, my school where I volunteer in DC, there's an actual psychiatrist in-house. So that's helpful.
Boy, what's your question?
But for schools that don't have these type of resources,
got it.
Finding that they're reaching out to psychiatrists. Like, what is that landscape for you in this new norm that we're in?
Yes, thank you. So I receive a lot of requests from schools. So a part of the work that I do is consulting to schools specifically to train teachers and educators in school systems on trauma, becoming trauma-informed institutions, but also understanding that racism is trauma and that children experience racism in the school day. And so some of the work that I'm doing with schools is, one, understanding that many children are going to come back to school feeling extremely traumatized because of COVID, but understanding that Black and Latino children are going to be even more traumatized, and Black and Latino children were already traumatized. Simply, again, being Black in America can lead to trauma. Living in a community where you may have food insecurity or housing insecurity is traumatizing. Experiencing a family member that has mental health problems, those can all be traumatizing. And each of these traumas are cumulative. So these build. And so often what happens are our kids come into class in what we describe as survival mode. So they're in that fight, flight, or freeze. And teachers will say, oh, he just exploded out of nowhere, and we don't understand why he exploded. But the issue is, because you're not trauma informed and because schools don't understand what our kids are coming in with, they may not know all that child had to experience last night or all that child had to experience in the morning. And so it's important to understand the way trauma impacts the brain and putting us into survival mode, meaning like we're focused on survival, not focused on learning. And that can be difficult for kids. And so teaching schools how to approach kids and using tools and techniques to reduce the stress and reduce the reactivity and that feeling of being in fight, flight, or freeze with things as simple as mindfulness. And mindfulness or meditation is just simply being present and going through breathing exercises every morning to help decrease that stress response so that kids can be in a position to be ready to learn. And that is needed more so now, again, because so many Black children have lost so much. Some of my patients have lost entire generations of their families because of COVID. They've lost friends, they've lost family that they will never be able to see again because of COVID. And so there's so much loss. And watching the news, seeing beautiful Black bodies being murdered on TV is traumatizing. And it's important that both parents and teachers recognize that our Black kids are coming in with significant pain. And so I do train teachers, one, to recognize trauma, understand how trauma impacts the brain, and understand how to support kids with trauma, but then how to not re-traumatize them. So your bias, your racism, the institutional racism that exists is only exacerbating underlying trauma. And we need to address that if we truly want to support our kids. And also having Black teachers. Black students do better with Black teachers. Black students do better with Black mentors. And so it's also important to add diversity to teaching staff because Black teachers are more likely to recognize excellence in our students.
All right.
And
Nicole Christian Brathwaite, an adult child psychiatrist. We appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Yeah, we'll try some of that. Summer's gonna take you behind in your room. No, I'm just messing with you. Doc, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. African Americans are dying at a rate higher than everyone else. Also, though, local and state governments across the country have set various social distancing guidelines and stay-at-home measures. But what happens if you're homeless? That's an issue. This is particularly true for people of color who are living on the streets in places like LA and other cities across the country. Joining me now to talk about what community organizations are doing to help is John Masiri, CEO for LA-based The People Concerned. John, glad to have you in Roland Martin Unfiltered. Huge problem there in Los Angeles. They're moving people out of different places. This is happening in other cities where they're displacing the homeless. But look, they are also impacted by COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Roland, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. And, you know, what we're seeing in Los Angeles is that Black and brown people are 2 times as likely to die from COVID-19 as the general population. We see in Angelenos experiencing homelessness that while Black people make up 8% of the county's population, they comprise 34% of people experiencing homelessness. So we have seen the structural, racism in our community play out in very real ways. So the pandemic has really laid bare the structural issues and inequalities that have been existing in communities of color, particularly Black and brown communities, for a very long time. And that's the reason why 6 of my colleagues here in Los Angeles joined me in sending a letter to our congressional delegation, and particularly working with Congresswoman Waters on working with local on-the-ground service providers who are working in these communities every single day and working on these disparities. And we have really lifted up the real issues and the impact of COVID-19 on communities of color. And so what we've been appealing to our government as these billions and hundreds of billions of dollars are flowing into states and counties to not forget that on-the-ground service providers like the People Concerned and others are working every day to move people indoors as quickly as possible so that we can address the negative impacts of COVID-19.
Folks, look, the numbers are real. 4.4 million confirmed cases of coronavirus in the United States. Guys, pull a graphic up, please. 2.14 million people have recovered and 151,000 have died. That number continues to go up. Some places, John, they are actually moving people into hotels that are empty, moving them into other places. You've got lots of downtown buildings. You've got parking structures that are empty. We saw something that was just shameful in Las Vegas, where they were marking off spots in a parking lot, and you had these 1,000+ rooms, several thousand room hotels that were wide open, and they were, y'all can't come in here, but they were marking off spots in parking lots, open air parking lots, not even parking garages.
Yes. So here in Los Angeles, we've been involved in an effort called Project Room Key, with the goal of moving 15,000 people across the state inside. And in Los Angeles, we actually set a very ambitious goal to move 15,000 people indoors. So far, Project Room Key has brought in about 4,000 people, and we've been operating 2 sites. And what I can tell you is that These efforts have targeted the most vulnerable in Los Angeles. So these are people over 65, people with underlying health conditions who are highly susceptible to COVID-19, and the vast majority, thousands of people sheltered indoors. So there's no reason for us to be leaving people unsheltered outside when we have empty hotel rooms that can be repurposed to bring people into safe and sanitary conditions where they have their own room, their own bathroom, they have access to food, to medical services, and then ultimately, of course, being able to connect them to permanent housing.
Last question for you. Are they even testing the homeless?
Oh, yes, there's wide-scale testing that's going on in Los Angeles. Our street outreach teams in Skid Row and across the county, but particularly in the Skid Row area, have been working on concentrated testing efforts for people experiencing homelessness, along with our partners at the Department of Public Health and Department of Health Services for the last several months. In addition to that, there have been wide-scale testing efforts in all of our interim housing facilities, which are congregate living facilities, as well as the test sites that are set up throughout the city and county of Los Angeles.
All right, then, John Messeri, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. We were talking again about this video that, the audio that dropped today that has caused a lot of consternation. And so this is the conversation that Donald Trump had with Bob Woodward of the Washington Post. Listen to this.
Now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Just today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older young people, to plenty of young people.
So
what's going on
give me a moment of talking to somebody, going through this with Fauci or somebody who kind of it caused a pivot in your mind, because it's clear just from what's on the public record that you went through a pivot on this to, oh my God, the gravity is almost inexplicable and unexplainable.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
sure, I want you to be.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
Okay, so you actually heard Donald Trump. Okay, so at the White House press briefing was delayed for a bit because they had to figure out what they were going to say. And if you want to know how absolutely nuts these people are, listen to Kayleigh McEnany, the press secretary, just lie to the American people.
How can the president bear no responsibility for the almost 200,000 lives lost when he downplayed the virus initially and he knew that how contagious and deadly it was? I don't understand how that can
The president never downplayed the virus. Once again, the president expressed calm. The president was serious about this when Democrats were pursuing their sham impeachment. He was expressing calm, and he was taking early action, and his actions are reflective of how seriously he took COVID.
The tact that he took, the language that he used.
No,
you said that he used hopeful language. Does he regret that, given where we are now?
No, this president embodied the American spirit that when we face a challenge, a crisis, a pandemic, we come together. We can be optimistic. We can be serious about it. We can take it seriously with our actions, which is exactly what this president does. It's why we lead the world in testing.
Did she just say Donald Trump did not downplay it? Okay, I'm going to go back to what Donald Trump said. Now, y'all, listen. There's audio. There's literally audio. Bob Woodward records his interviews. Kayleigh McEnany says Donald Trump did not downplay coronavirus. This is Trump downplaying it.
Now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Just today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older
exactly.
young people, to plenty of young people.
So
what's going on
give me a moment of talking to somebody going through this with Fauci or somebody who kind of it caused a pivot in your mind, because it's clear just from what's on the public record that you went through a pivot on this to, oh my God, the gravity is almost inexplicable and unexplainable.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes,
because I don't want to create a panic.
I always wanted to play it down. I am still playing it down because I did not want to create a panic. My pals, A. Scott Bolton, former chair, National Bar Association Political Action Committee, Robert Patillo, Executive Director, Rainbow Push Coalition, Peachtree Street Project, Teresa Lundy, Principal Founder, TML Communications. Teresa, so dude was lying. He was lying. He knew he was serious. He's saying one thing privately, another thing publicly, and all of these idiots who are following him were saying, and all these states who were not implementing the right strategy because he was downplaying it. And then for Kayleigh McEnany to stand there and say, I wouldn't lie to you, and then actually lie, that's just beyond stupid.
It's beyond it, Eric. It's like I can't think of the words outside of disgusting and dangerous of the two words that I can think of what Donald Trump has done since this pandemic. Thousands of lives could have been changed if he did not downplay it, if he did not want to cause the panic, right? Because, again, we haven't had a pandemic in 102 years since the Spanish flu. So there obviously is a playbook of what could have been done, but I think the first and foremost thing that could have been done, especially with this type of president, is tell the and to ensure that his staff was also telling the truth and not trying to make sure they have his back. Kayleigh, I was impressed with her as a young woman, in her 30s as the press secretary, but she's been willing to really just lose herself in this entire process. Right? There's one thing to be on the campaign, but then there's one to actually serve the White House and the American people, and she hasn't been doing that. So, but that goes for a whole stem of his team. So I'm not sure what's happening in those back rooms where, before they get to a press conference and before they are getting their daily briefings, is how can we protect the president? But no one's protecting the American people, and that's why we have thousands of lives that are dying because of this misinformation.
These folks are absolute liars, Robert. And for Trump defenders to say, oh, no, he was protecting the people, he was looking out for the people, didn't want there to be a panic. Near 200,000 people are now dead.
You're absolutely correct, Roland. And think about what when these first tapes took place. This was mid to early February. So this is before Donald Trump did his speech where he said the coverage of his response was a hoax. This was before Matt Gaetz sat on the floor of Congress with a gas mask on. This is before we went back and forth for 3 months over whether or not we should be taking hydroxychloroquine. This is before we were having a full-blown culture war with rifles and rocket launchers over wearing masks. Donald Trump knew in February and March that masks were effective and that it was airborne, and just chose to say downplay the need to wear masks and cause armed conflicts over wearing masks. Think about the thousands and thousands of people who could have had their lives saved, the thousands and thousands of people who would not be infected today if we had simply taken this seriously in February instead of finding out in September what was the truth. And also for Bob Woodruff, how do you sit on this information for 6 months? I understand you want to put it into a book, you want to compile the information, but this is vital national security and health information. How do you just sit on this for 6 months and only release it when it's time for your book to come out, instead of letting the American people know months ago information going to save tens of thousands of lives? So this is just an all-around failure of our broken system. And unfortunately, Trump has become trans veracity. He's past the point of anybody caring whether or not he is lying. People assume that he is lying and then continue on from there. This week, we're talking about, did he lie about coronavirus and have it on tape? Last week, it was whether or not he called military families losers and suckers. The week before that, it was whether or not he was trying to defund the post office. The week before that, he tweeted about trying to move the election. We're doing the monster of the week thing from Power Rangers in the 90s, fighting each individualized battle instead of taking a cohesive approach of just saying that this is a nation in chaos. This is what a failed state looks like. This is what late-stage capitalism, as Werner put it, looks like, and that we are having our systems broken apart at the seams. And unless we are willing to make corrective action, it may be too late to save what we have left.
A hoax. Yeah. This was one of the questions that was raised at the press briefing. Of course, Kayleigh could not answer this one. Y'all, listen to this.
Not lying. Why did he call it a hoax? Kayleigh, if he's not lying, why did he call it a hoax?
Of course, she wouldn't answer that one. Scott, he wouldn't answer that question. But it's legitimate. It's like he kept calling it a hoax, but she's saying, but he wasn't lying. Really?
It's like you ever painted a floor or a wall and painted yourself into a corner where you don't have a response or you can't get out without stepping on the paint. That's where Kayleigh was today in that press conference. You know, she's defending or trying to defend the indefensible. She has a boss that lies with no conscience whatsoever. He has no conscience. He doesn't care. He knew he was being taped. He knew this book was coming out, and he still lied. And there are no repercussions. Robert and I were talking about this earlier. There are no repercussions, so he just keeps on lying about it. That's just really, really a very bad situation for our democracy. It really is. And the other thing you got to remember here is that his lies, it's worse than the taping, by the way. He was briefed in December by his intelligence people who said this was coming. He admitted that on tape, and he was asked about that, and that's when he went into how he played it down. But him playing it down cost lives, and so but again, it doesn't matter to his GOP and that 40%. Democrats better come out in large numbers because this president is probably the most dangerous president who's ever been in the White House.
Bottom line is here. His supporters, Teresa, they don't give a damn. They don't care if he lies. They don't. They're just going to sit here and just vote for whatever. But the bottom line here is this here. I would hope there are people who are independents. I would hope there are pissed off Democrats who are going to turn out in large numbers, because if you think that what this man has done so far is crazy, give his ass 4 more years.
You know, I think people are actually waking up to what Donald Trump has been doing the last 5 years. And you know what? The way Robert literally just did the week by week scenario that I feel like we're pretty much in a series with our president is, I think people are really starting to understand why it's important to get to the polls. I don't even think we need to do any more media ad buys as it relates to getting to the polls. I think now it's just more about understanding just what needs to happen. So, I mean, there has been countless conversations, countless meetings and conferences that have been just popping up where people are really getting engaged and saying, you know what, the last couple days, weeks of the election, they are trying to figure out what needs to be done. And so they're galvanizing, they're having conversations, setting up volunteer strategies. I know commissioner's office across Pennsylvania are actually paying people to be poll workers, right? That is the first time that's actually been done outside of the party. But now the state is actually stepping in and saying, listen, we need more bodies at the polls. And so I think there's a lot of young people stepping up. I think there has been a lot of change and movement. But again, Trump's administration has lost the message when Trump started, when all these revelations started to come to light. So, there's a huge opportunity here.
Yeah, but Roland, if I may, real quick, we've got three opponents as Democrats, right? You've got the GOP / Donald Trump. You got voter suppression, and you got Russian interference that Democrats are running against. He underpolls in every poll, as we know. How do the Democrats defeat that?
You got to turn folks out. Simple as that. That's what you got to do. I said this here. I tweeted this here, folks. Y'all be able to see my video. Let me know if you're okay. So I said after the Bob Woodward thing came out, first thing I said is I wonder how fast the folks with the Lincoln Project are going to be able to get an ad out. That was like one of the first things that I said. And so I said, and I think the tapes came out around 11 or so. And I said, I think they'll have an ad out by 3 o'clock. Actually, they're out before 2 o'clock. So this is what they dropped that quick.
This is more deadly. This is 5 per, this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff.
We show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
Not just older.
Yeah, exactly.
Young people, to plenty of young people.
Young people are almost immune to this disease.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
We lose thousands and thousands of people a year to the flu. We don't turn the country off.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
What this does, Robert, Trump wanted desperately for the conversation to be about law and order. No, he did not want it to be about coronavirus. This brings it back to his Achilles heel.
Of course, this is Achilles heel, and I think the strategy that we've seen the White House roll out today, of saying it was just about trying to prevent a panic, I think that might be one of the dumbest talking points I've heard, and you can tell that this caught them completely off guard. The idea of this president not wanting to incite panic when the entire Republican convention was a return to the American Horror Story, MS-13 will be sent to the suburbs to destroy your communities and rape your wife. That is inciting panic. This idea of putting the McCloskeys on television who tried to kill protesters, tweeting about Killer Kyle and Kenosha. That is inciting violence. That is inciting discord. So this idea of wanting to keep a calm in the American people, this is almost like telling your wife that you only lied to her because you knew it would make her angry. That is the equivalent of what the White House is rolling out as their defense, that the president didn't want you to panic. That's why he lied to you about how deadly a virus was. It's killed tens of thousands of, at this point, hundreds of thousands of Americans. We are 20% of the death toll of the entire earth. and we are not 20% of the world population. So this idea that he wrote out in his press conference today saying, well, we did a great job because millions would have died without what we did, and I only lied to you to keep you calm, I think that is a point that Democrats have to hop on. Not just the Lincoln Project, not just Republican groups, not just the media. The Democratic Party has to have a way to articulate a message and turn it around quickly and use that to motivate voters. If you can link the fact that we've been in quarantine for 6 months to the fact that the president lied to us the first month when he could have gotten a hold
and that
of this,
people died.
That is how you get people motivated. But simply turning this into just the latest in a week by week scandal is how you lose the messaging war. Think about the fact that President Trump got impeached earlier this year. We don't even talk about that in the election season. He is that able to change the conversation. So if the Democrats don't hop on this like a starving dog on a bone, then you're going to end up losing this week of messaging.
Folks, and the folks with the Midas touch also dropped their ad. Watch this.
Trump pretended the coronavirus wouldn't come to our shores.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
The risk to the American people remains very low.
He pretended the Democrats were overreacting.
And this is their new hope.
He pretended it would go away.
A lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat.
And then he pretended again.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
View this the same as the flu.
And again.
At some point, that's going to sort of just disappear.
And again.
It's going away. No, it'll go away.
While Trump pretended, Americans faced real consequences. Nearly 200,000 dead and rising. Businesses closed. And now, as over 1,000 Americans die each day, what's the Trump administration's plan? Pretend that the pandemic is over. In a time of crisis, Americans can't afford to have a pretend president.
I wanted to always play it down.
Midas Touch is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I think you're going to see the hammer constantly, Teresa. And the other piece is here. Joe Biden's already out. He was speaking in Michigan. He spoke out on this as well. I mean, this is the defining issue of this campaign, and it has a direct impact on turnout as well. And so I don't think you're going to see it reflected in polling for another 3 to 4 days. But again, the fact that if Democrats hammer this constantly, this is going to help them.
This is a phenomenal gift to the Democratic Party. I think, when Donald Trump began to show who he was from the beginning, if we remember from the beginning of his campaign days, to how they were trying to get him to transform while he was president. It just didn't work. The real Donald Trump coming down the escalator of his building showed up in the beginning stages, right? And I think it's coming to the forefront where everybody is starting to honestly get their talking points together. But honestly, it's like, does this make sense to you, right? So it's not as much as a that the Democrats have to put out like, hey, he did this, he did this. You can literally have a workbook, unfortunate, about why Donald Trump lies to the American people, and the Republicans continuously have his back. It's getting so bad that the Republicans are literally on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, and they really can't explain some of the things that he does. So if you see most of them, they actually stop having the interviews unless it's talking about their bill. Because it's hard to defend someone where you really just don't understand it or keeping you out the loop. Donald Trump has proven to him, his team, and the American people that he doesn't care about lying, doesn't care about the lives that were lost, he doesn't care about the families, the testimonials, the police brutality. He went to Wisconsin and gave, some mayors $1 million for their police department, but said nothing to Jacobs Blake's family. I mean, if we don't have a president that is for us, and I think Democrats need to make that very clear on Election Day, but, more so in their everyday conversations.
Yep.
We absolutely should be having these dialogues about what the next president of the United States looks like. And if we're not only talking about Joe Biden, we absolutely have to talk about Senator Kamala Harris.
And folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. As of today, 6 million cases of COVID-19 in the United States. 186,000 people have died from the disease. Public health officials in all 50 states and 5 large cities have been notified by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They are to prepare to distribute a vaccine for coronavirus to healthcare workers and other high-risk groups as soon as late October or early November. This past week, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the country's top infectious disease expert, and Dr. Stephen Hahn, the head of the Food and Drug Administration, have said that a vaccine may be available for certain groups before the clinical trials are completed. That is only if the data is overwhelmingly positive. Joining us right now is Dr. Tyson Bell, critical care infectious disease specialist at the University of Virginia. Doc, do you buy this nonsense? I call it nonsense regarding this here because Trump desperately wants to rush out with something before the election to show, oh, I'm paying attention to this. That whole plasma, news conference, that was a joke as well. And the FDA had to come back and apologize for it. Are people in the medical community actually buying this?
I think there's a lot of skepticism, Roland, honestly, because this administration has made it clear that they want to have a vaccine out and available before the election. And unfortunately, the FDA and the CDC have both put out signals that they've been bending to political pressure. So we do think that this is an ambitious timeline. Of course, if there's something could be ready and available by late October, early November, that would be great. But based on the enrollment, the pace of enrollment now and the approval process, that's incredibly ambitious. So there is some skepticism.
So this supposed vaccine will be first for healthcare workers like you. Will you take a vaccine without knowing the clinical trial results?
Well, that's an important question because there is an approval process that the FDA goes through, and there's 2 different main approval pathways. One is the emergency use authorization. This is the way that convalescent plasma and hydroxychloroquine were approved, and you see how, at least for hydroxychloroquine, that was revoked. It's a lower standard of evidence to get a product on the market under the guise that you have to get something out there quickly before all the evidence is available. It would be much better to get it fully licensed before distributing it to billions of people, billions with a B, because we have to be absolutely sure that something that we're giving to healthy people is not going to make them sick.
Well, but the thing here again, Fauci has been saying for the longest, take your time going through this. Trump is saying rush, rush, rush. I'll be honest. I don't trust anything from the FDA. I don't. I don't trust anything Hahn says because they are bowing to the pressure from Trump. And I can't look to them as a credible, fair source, knowing full well the kind of pressure he has exerted them to skip over steps, skip processes, throw them out the window in order to fit his narrative.
I think there are a lot of issues here with erosion of public trust in our institutions. And, our thought was, that the FDA and the CDC, where public health professionals have made their careers, would not succumb to these sort of pressures. I want to point to comments by Peter Marks, who heads the FDA division on vaccine development. He has indicated publicly that if he felt that the FDA was succumbing to public pressure, that he would resign. Now, the FDA, before they approve a product like a vaccine, they listen to an advisory committee that's made up of independent experts around the country. It's called the Vaccine and Biological Related Products Committee. So if an approval comes, this committee will review the results of the clinical trials and give a recommendation. The FDA follows through with it. Their next meeting is scheduled for October 22nd. It's a public meeting. I think this will be an important way to see the inner working, to see what data is available, if there is any data available, and to make sure that we're going through and following the science. Now, this is one instance, Roland, where we absolutely cannot put the politics before the science.
And again, look, you're already dealing with a disease that, frankly, health people have no idea how it really affects us. You've got these sports leagues, these conferences in college. I saw the Penn State head of medicine saying that of the players that tested positive, showing inflammation around the heart tied to a particular disease as well. And folks just don't know. And I'm sorry, I just can't, for the life of me, I can't listen to anything that comes out of Donald Trump or Mike Pence's mouth where the public can say, oh, rest assured the federal government has done what it's supposed to do when it comes to this vaccine to make sure it is safe. No, he wants to be able to say, I did it. See, I'm trying to save it.
Make sure that we follow the science, Roland. I can't stress it enough that we've had several instances now where that comes into question. And through different pandemics and public health crises, we've always had the trust of the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA to do what's right as far as the science. No one ever gets everything right, but we trust that we're following the science and not bending to political pressure. And unfortunately, we're in a different time now with a different president. And we just have to make sure that as public health professionals, that we're being diligent with the science, that we're messaging people appropriately on forums like this, so that when there is a product available, we can be sure that it's going to be safe for people.
All right, then. Well, look, I think, again, what our goal, very simple, is to ensure that our folks are safe. And, I just wish, you had people of courage who had the audacity to tell Donald Trump no. Then if he said, I'll fire you, they would say, fine, fire me, but I have to do this for the good of the American people.
All right, Roland, when something's out, call me again and we'll talk.
All right, Dr. Tyson Bill, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Erica, I don't trust the administration. I don't.
No, and none of us have any. Yeah, I don't either. When you think about too the partnership that this administration afforded a Pfizer and a Moderna, both of these these companies, billions of dollars in federal money to produce this vaccine A, vaccine B. And when you start looking at, okay, now these organizational charts have been sent to public state health officials, telling these individuals to get ready for a possible infrastructure set up for people to receive this vaccine A, vaccine B. And interestingly enough, thinking about the population that's going to be impacted by this, the lion's share of service workers are Black, brown, and people of color. So that they're going to be subjected to maybe one or two of these differing vaccines, a courtesy of the Trump administration, whose real focus is the economy by way of the stock market, which we all know the stock market is not the economy. And so because this administration has not, in fact, been truthful, that they have weaponized the Department of Health, HHS, that they've weaponized the FDA. When you think about parts of the CDC that have been weaponized, that we just can't trust because they've not laid out a national strategy. But what they have, in fact, done is skipped over to say, okay, so 186,000 souls have gone. But you know what? We have the answer to it, and we're probably going to have it ready early November, November 2nd. When you have a November 3rd general election, I would say to people, this same person that bragged about being able to remember words that are related to a test for people that unfortunately are experiencing dementia, that this very same person that said it was like magic, it was going to go away, that people not be tricked, that people follow the money and actually listen to the science of what people and what we need to do as a nation to actually curb the spread of COVID and be diligent in waiting for a vaccine that is going to take at least 18 months to 2 years plus, as the science has shared with us.
I ain't got no faith in these folk at all, Reese.
I don't either. And I think that it's very rational to be skeptical or even cynical about this administration's motivations, especially how they have rushed these so-called treatments that aren't in fact treatments to hospitals. However, I do believe in following the science, and I think I will reserve judgment until we actually have something. At this point, it just appears to be more of a publicity stunt, a PR campaign to try to make it seem like Trump has it all under control. But I mean, I don't believe for any reason, for any second, that the United States would be the first to have a vaccine when there's a collective of 170 nations, including the World Health Organization, that is a collaborative on getting a vaccine, which the United States has declined to join. And so I know one thing that's for damn sure: if they don't have the vaccine and Trump puts out a vaccine, I will not be taking that. But I still urge everybody to follow the science and hope. And not just hope, but critically assess whether or not the science is the one that's leading the charge on this vaccine push, or if it's propaganda and the Trump campaign wanted to be reelected.
Thing for me, Greg, is again, I'm not afraid of a vaccine. So I'm not one of these anti-vaxxers. I just don't trust these SOBs, and the media is falling for this. Man, ain't no way in hell this vaccine gonna be ready before the election.
Nope.
No, of course not. And one of the things I really appreciate, and I think we all, I'm sure, appreciate about your interview with Dr. Bell, is that you asked him straightforward. And he, as a medical professional and a scientist, could not say, but his silence was telling. You asked him, you gonna take it? And he said, well, you know, we're going to see. We're going to follow the science. And yeah, follow the science is like rule of law. It sounds good in theory. The American presidency has become more and more an imperial presidency, really since the Vietnam era, since the Nixon administration. The courts have kind of abdicated their role. The federal legislature has not served as a check on power. And so, you know, I'm reading a book by Ryan Alford called Permanent State of Emergency. And one of the things that Alford talks about is the fact that what we have now in America prior to Donald Trump really is in some ways an elected dictatorship. The executive branch has kind of overflown its boundaries. So now when you have a consigliere like Tony Barr at the Attorney General's office, I mean, you saw the news today that broke that they want to now prosecute Google and Google's parent company Alphabet for antitrust violations. They want to get that in the pipeline. Now, Barr is overruling career prosecutors at the Department of Justice because they want to get it done before November. There is absolutely no way there's going to be a vaccine. And like you, I'm not putting anything in my arm with a memory of Tuskegee and Henrietta Lacks and what happened to Johns Hopkins, the body snatchers of the cadavers. No, hell no. And in fact, whether a vaccine comes or not, I'm not an anti-vaxxer either, God knows. But we all know that this is being driven, to Reese's point and to Erica's point, this is being driven by politics. You can't trust these people. And when you've allowed a federal executive branch to overthrow the boundaries of its authority through the steady erosion of the rule of law in the judiciary and the federal legislatures abandoning their oversight, then you end up, when you got a white nationalist, a fascist, and his toady consigliere at the Attorney General's office, hey, hold on for all your life, because they're not making any decisions in the best interest of anything other than, as Erica said, the criminal enterprise called Trump Incorporated and the white nationalists who are getting their judges on the benches and getting to pursue their agendas. But we are an afterthought, and they will throw us in the trash, brother.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, the folks at Seek.com, black-owned company founded by Mary Spiel. They've had a couple of great products we want you to check out. This is their virtual reality headset, which, of course, allows for you to watch the content on Seek.com right through your phone. Check it all out in virtual reality. In addition to that, you can also look at 360-degree video on your phone as well. And so that's what this particular headset is. You just simply take your phone, drop it right into the headset, and that's it. Then, of course, you have their 360-degree 4D headphone, which is right here. Of course, Bluetooth enabled, tremendous bass sound. You hear the sound all around. Also, gamers usually got a headset used for that as well. And so you can get one or both of these products or subscribe to Seek.com by going to their website, Seek.com, Seek.com, with the promo code. Come on, guys, show it, RMVIP2020, RMVIP2020. And so go to Seek.com. And so we certainly appreciate Seek being a partner here at Roland Martin Unfiltered, and, of course, being a sponsor of our bi-weekly tech segment. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. Okay, now, y'all, last night, Trump made his big old fireworks display. You know there were protesters out there in the streets? Actually, this is a pretty cool video. Watch this. Well, Derek, 180,000 have died because Trump failed when it came to coronavirus.
You know, it's interesting. So I was Wednesday. My cousin texted me. She said, "Cuz, they're running that video on TV where you were standing behind Trump and in front of Pence when I was at the White House." And I was like, "Damn, what is it?" So I turned on CNN to watch it to see what it was. But scrolling at the bottom of the screen was Spain. Their health minister said they had over 7,000 cases of coronavirus in one day. And he said, quote, "Coronavirus is out of control in our country. Spain, Italy, France, all the numbers are up." Even the other one where everybody was pointing to, we should use it as an example. Everybody is doing right now around the world. It's not just a United States problem.
New Zealand? Is that what you meant?
New Zealand's not.
New Zealand's not up.
No. New Zealand. No, hold on. Let me help you. New Zealand had two.
All the numbers are up.
New Zealand had 2 new cases and they shut it down. 2.
I guess from 0 to 2 is okay. If you want to, all right.
So CNN is lying.
So your defense here is that other countries have numbers going up, even if it's only 2 people.
No defense.
So Trump is fine, and America's not really in trouble.
So 2 and 200,000, you see a difference there, don't you? I mean, just.
What I'm saying to you is the coronavirus is deadly and it's impacting the entire world. It's just
you're saying more than President Trump is, because during the entire RNC they spoke about the coronavirus in the past tense and as though it didn't exist.
It's his fault.
No, well, hell yes, his fault. Here's the deal. When you're the president, no. Here's the deal. When you are the president, Here's the deal. When Obama was president, Republicans were like, you can't take credit for low gas prices. Gas prices went high. It's your fault it's high gas prices. Republicans said, you can't take credit. No. I said, no. Wait. No. Republicans said, you can't take credit for the improving economy. Oh, I remember Jack Welch actually said, we can't trust these unemployment numbers. But now all of a sudden, I've got the lowest, it's all me. This fool actually said last night, Rob, I rebuilt the American economy in 3 years. How your ass, that's like saying, I rebuilt a car that already existed because I put some air in the tire.
Yeah, do you remember when the Republicans got upset during 2012 when Obama was talking about how the government and economy works and how no one business builds everything by themselves? You have to have roads, you have to have bridges, you have to have, and he said one line, you didn't build that, and they ran a whole line of multi-million-dollar commercials. This fool says that he built the whole economy in 3 years, which of course is not true. But like here is what's true. He is responsible for the piss-poor lack response that he had with the coronavirus. How we responded was up to him. He decided not to have a national effort. He decided that it was a hoax. He decided that people didn't need to wear masks, and that caused a whole bunch of lives. Period. End of discussion.
Hey, Derek.
Starts and ends there.
Hey, Derek, I'm just curious. I just want to know, have you ever done this?
I know you're about to ask me something crazy.
No. I just want to know, have you ever done this? Have you ever sat down with some friends who you and your wife invited over to the house, and your wife prepared this amazing meal, and she spent all day preparing this meal, and sat down and one of your guests said, Derek, this is an amazing meal. And you said, absolutely, I spent all day working on this meal. And your wife look at your ass like, no, your ass didn't. That's Donald Trump. Obama literally said, here is a great economy. And he's like, oh, I built this. It's all mine. I built it all by myself. I get all the credit. Nothing happened before I came. Your wife would sit there. She would say, Derek, let me holler at you for a second. She would cuss you out there on the spot, wouldn't she?
Pretty much.
Hell yes. Hell yes. Yeah. So that's exactly probably how Obama feels when this lame ass up there talking about, I rebuilt the economy in 3 years. Man, whatever the hell. That's just nonsense.
That narrative also presupposes that the economy was completely in shambles and destructive before Donald Trump came in.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely incorrect.
That's what I'm saying. That's like saying, wait a minute, I have all these ingredients and uncooked meat, and just nothing is cooked. But then all of a sudden, if I came in and did something with it, I can take credit for the whole dinner. But you can't walk in and say the whole dinner is now prepared, is cooked, and is served, and then you go, where my love? Show me some love. Man,
he destroyed. He made it worse now. The economy's in a worse position.
Take all the credit for the coronavirus deaths, but no credit for the economy.
No, Derek, what we're saying is, if your ass gonna take credit for the good stuff, your ass gonna accept blame for the bad stuff. And I ain't trying to hear, oh, it was so great before COVID. Because that's a part of that's in your 4 years, baby. See, you got to accept what's in your 4. That's like George W. Bush saying, yo, the economy was kicking until that shit fell out, until the housing crisis just destroyed the entire economy and almost put us into the second greatest depression in American history. Donald Trump is the equivalent of a dude who said, yo, we were killing them in that game. And they said, no, you would kill them in the first half. You got your ass whooped in the second half and you lost the game. yeah, but by halftime, we were killing them.
Yeah, I would say this about Trump, though. You cannot underestimate his ability to rally the troops, though. He knows how to.
Oh, they don't care about lies.
They don't care about lives. They don't care about the economy. I mean, like, he's able to get them to feel so good about whatever, about whiteness, about craziness, about whatever, about his bully lies that they will just buy into it.
Derek, for 3 years, this man has lied, saying he signed the Choice Act for veterans. Dog, there's literally video of Obama signing it in 2014. The fool last night said he signed the Choice Act.
And everybody stood in applause.
It was in 2014, bruh. This man will lie. We will just lie about anything.
and things that can easily be fact-checked extremely quickly because he knows that his base does not care about facts. He knows that his base doesn't care about truth. He knows that his base is going to be with him regardless. And I think that he also counts on Americans as just not being that smart because literally his speech was fact-checked in real time. He's not only making up dates and events, he's also creating stories out of nowhere in terms of his own progress. Yeah, and I think that, it gets frustrating after a while because you continue to see this. We saw it got him into the White House the first time. I would be scared to think that this exact same thing would get him into it a second time.
Hey, Derek, you're an Omega, and so I've now found.
You guys.
Go ahead, Derek. Go ahead.
I was going to say conversely, you're saying that, he thinks that Americans are stupid. The same could be said for the Democrats.
On what?
And just that all black people are going to vote for me, period.
Actually, if you start breaking down numbers, the reality is that was 93% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. That's damn nearly all black people.
Derek, it's just by the likelihood, just like the likelihood that the majority of white men are going to vote Republican. You know why? Because they always vote Republican.
Right. I mean, right.
I don't think of that as racist.
Like, for instance, like if Donald Trump said, yo, the majority of white folks with me. Well, no Democrat has gotten higher than 40% of the white vote since 1964. Well, that's factually correct. So what's the problem? So Derek,
we talked about this on one of your shows before, Roland, that, in 2016, that was the lowest turnout for black voters.
No. There was
the lowest turnout.
No, the
2016.
No. The lowest.
20 years.
Right. Thank you very much. Now you had to correct yourself because the lowest turnout for black people when we couldn't vote. Yes. So that was a drop of 2.4%. In 2016. We're going to make sure there's no drop. All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. So today in a news conference, ABC's Jonathan Karl. You know what? Since, of course, it's time for Trump Lives Matter, go ahead and run it. Well, again, John Karl of ABC News had, the guts to ask Donald Trump today about that Bob Woodward book where he admitted downplaying coronavirus, but then the rest of the public, everything is fine, we got it under control. Watch this exchange and just count the lies.
Mr. President, Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust what you have to say
Such
now?
a terrible question, and the phraseology. I didn't lie. What I said is we have to be calm. We can't be panicked. I knew that the tapes were, these were a series of phone calls that we had, mostly phone calls. And Bob Woodward is somebody that I respect just from hearing the name for many, many years, not knowing too much about his work, not caring about his work. But I thought it would be interesting to talk to him for a period of, calls. So we did that. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't even know if the book is good or bad. But certainly if he thought that was a bad statement, he would have reported it because he thinks that, you don't want to have anybody that is going to suffer medically because of some fact. And he didn't report it because he didn't think it was bad. Nobody thought it was bad. Wait a minute. And your question, the way you phrase that is such a disgrace. It's a disgrace to ABC television network. It's a disgrace to your employer. And that's the answer. You ready? Because I love. Of course I didn't. Of course I didn't. No.
Deadlier than the flu, and then you went out and told the American public that this was just like the flu.
Let me tell you something.
You told
We've had
Woodward
flu
one thing and you
years.
told everybody else something else.
No, and 5 times, right? 5 times. Do you ever hear the expression 5 times? We've had flu years where we lost 100,000 people. The flu is a very serious problem for this country also, and we've been losing them. Scott, what kind of a number have we lost over the years with flus? Into the hundreds of thousands?
Well, I mean, the last 5 years have been something like 35 to 80,000 per year, every year, even with antiviral drugs and even with
Flu is a very serious problem also. But just so you
this is worse than the most deadlier than the most strenuous flu.
Okay.
And then you went out and said it's just like the flu.
What I went out and said is very simple. Listen, what I went out and said is very simple. I want to show a level of confidence, and I want to show strength as a leader, and I want to show that our country is going to be fine one way or the other. Whether we lose one person, we shouldn't lose any because this shouldn't have happened. This is China's fault. This is nobody's fault but China. China should not have allowed it to happen. Whether you have one person, 180,000 people, or 2.5 or 3 million people, which it could have been very seriously if we didn't make the moves. And when you look at the opposition where they said, oh, why did he put the ban on? Dr. Fauci said we saved hundreds of thousands of lives by putting the ban on China and then ultimately putting the ban on Europe. There was no lie here. What we're doing is we're leading, and we're leading in a proper way. And if, frankly, somebody else was leading it, they wouldn't have closed it. If you look at Nancy Pelosi, you look at Cuomo, you look at de Blasio, you look at Biden, months later they said there's no problem. They're talking about me. Months later. And before any statement was made, you have to remember, I put the ban on China. So obviously, outwardly, I said it's a very serious problem. And it's always a serious problem. That doesn't mean I'm going to jump up and down in the air and start saying, people are going to die, people are going to die. No, I'm not going to do that. We're going to get through this. And we're right now, I hope, really think we're rounding the final turn. And a lot of good things are happening with vaccines and with therapeutics. But there's no lying. And the way you asked that question is very disgraceful. Phil, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I do think so.
Mr.
I think we did a
President.
great job. I think we did a great job. And the people that did such are generals, our admirals, Mike Pence, all of the people that have worked so hard. And now Dr. Atlas, and all of the, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, they should be respected for the job they've done.
So you won't
And
downplay
you
it
haven't-
again. You won't downplay it again because you said you downplayed it. That's what you told me.
All I'm doing is, no, I don't want to jump up and down and start screaming death, death, because that's not what it's about. We have to lead a country. We're leading a great country, and we're doing a great job. And the people that have done such a good job should be given the kind of credit that they deserve. We possibly have done the best jobs when you start looking at what we're doing with the vaccines and therapeutics and ventilators. We had no ventilators, John. We make thousands of ventilators now a month, and we're supplying them to the whole world. The job we've done is the best job. And don't give me any credit. Give the people that have done this the credit. They've done a great job. Yeah, Phil, go ahead.
His ass was lying. First of all, to say we had no ventilators is a damn lie. It's just 100% lie. I mean, look, that's what you're going to get. If Donald Trump's lips are moving, he's lying. Joining me this week, Erica Savage Wilson, host Savage Politics Podcast, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, and Reese Colbert, Black Women and Views. Just straight up ass line, Erica. As simple as that. I mean, bottom line is, oh no, that question is horrible. That's just a disgraceful question. No, you're a disgrace. Because you said one thing to Bob Woodward and you were lying publicly.
Yes, the same Bob Woodward that has written 19 books about American politics. But I will tell you, Roland, where he was telling the truth, that the United States is in fact leading. We're leading in COVID infections at 6.39 million. We're leading in deaths worldwide right now at just under 192,000. So if people want to continue on with a leader who could really care less, who believes that when he steps to that dais that he's actually presenting himself as a strong man, what he's doing is really furthering the fact that he is a pathological narcissistic liar, that he has no strategy, that he has no plan, and that what he does every time he steps up to address the American public, as he disgracefully did today at 3 o'clock, interrupting our days, was to really prove the point that the level of incompetency that this particular regime has demonstrated is not something that we can continue to hold on to for the remainder of 2020 and definitely not into 2021.
And the bottom line here, Reese, again, when you look at what he said, I wasn't jumping up and down. I wasn't trying to scare people, but you sure as hell try to scare about the caravan. And you want to scare suburban white women about Cory Booker's going to come to your house when, hell, a lot of them wouldn't mind Cory Booker dropping by their house. Then Antifa and everything else. And, here come the scary black people, Black Lives Movement.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is Donald Trump has always been the chaos president. And the notion that he is somehow has an aversion to panic, he didn't want the stock market to panic because that's how he measures success and economic success in this country. But he absolutely has no problem playing to people's fears and to chaos and creating panic, even where there is none. But the problem is not just a matter of his rhetoric being lying and dangerous. The problem is his actions. We know how he refused to act on actually addressing coronavirus. We had ventilators that were out of date because he did not keep up the national stockpile that President Obama and Vice President Biden left. We know that he, had a bidding war between different states because he refused to invoke the Defense Production Act. So this is not just a matter of Donald Trump's rhetoric being dangerous. This is a matter of his inaction, his deliberate abdication of his responsibility, as well as his administration's responsibility to have a national response. And to me, the most damning part about all of this is that he thinks this is a good job. That alone is damning. Do you guys think it's a good job that most of us that are responsible are still stuck in our house, that we're retreating when it comes to testing, no longer testing people who are coming in from outside of the country, that we are opening up schools unsafely where schools have to close down multiple times? What about this response is competent and encouraging? Do you guys want another year, 4 years of this kind of great governance? I don't think so. People really need to wake up and realize that regardless of all of his lies, the actions and the fact that he thinks this is a good job is reason enough to vote his ass out.
So here's what I find to be really interesting. Greg, so Bob Woodward should have called the authorities. Like who? I mean, to say, he was concerned, he should have called the authorities. Idiot, you occupy the White House.
Right.
What I keep trying to explain to people, Greg, about this, and especially these people who say, Trump and Biden, they're the same. If you think you've seen insane in the last 4 years, you do not want to see insanity if Trump gets another 4 years.
No, you're right, Roland. By the way, I guess we went out tonight with the black and gold. That's beautiful.
Yes, sir.
I guess
looking good, guys. Looking good.
I really did that.
For sure.
but it's funny. We're finally getting to the point, maybe in this country, where we are reframing the narrative. Donald Trump is only interested in one human being. That's Donald John Trump. He's tried to shrink the entire country down to one man, and he's successfully, that's worked for a few people in this country. I like what Seth Meyers said the other night. Seth Meyers said every time Donald Trump opened his mouth, it's like listening to slam poetry night at the head trauma injury ward. In other words, we have to stop treating this man as if he is mentally well and anything other, as Reese said, than a narcissist. He's only interested in himself. At this point, he is desperately trying to figure out a pathway to re-election. He's collapsed the post office. He has called anyone with any credibility or competence from his leadership there in the White House. He has bought all in on Stephen Miller's ultra uber racist white nationalist terrorist agenda. And in that exchange we saw today, that's the latest member of his playpen, that fool Scott Atlas out of the Hoover Institute at Stanford. And his own colleagues out there at Stanford said, don't listen to this guy, a radiologist telling people masks don't work, children can't get coronavirus. A snake oil salesman is saying herd immunity is the way to go. Donald Trump has gone all in on the reality that only exists between those orange ears in his addled skull. So as a result, it was interesting today, Roland, to hear the word lie given to him in the White House. Perhaps we are at an event horizon at a moment when we don't need to talk about how many times he lies. The man is mentally ill, a narcissist, and determined to hold on to power by any means necessary. With that as the point of departure, we can now approach everything that happens.
And again, it's just people who don't understand what we're dealing with, and people say, oh, you shouldn't be focusing too much attention. I'm trying to tell y'all, early this week, Mitch McConnell moved on another federal judge.
Yes,
they plan on moving on they have 4 other federal judges queued up. They plan on, so that's going to move them to about 207 or 208 federal judges that are lifetime appointments. Y'all need to understand. And so understand the okie doke that these people are trying to play. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, Seek.com is a black-owned company founded by Mary Spiel. They have a couple of great products for you. First of all, these are amazing headphones right here. These particular headphones are Bluetooth, tremendous bass, 360-degree headphones, 4D. You can use this for gaming if you're playing video games. Also, of course, listen to music, videos, you name it. And Greg, yeah, they're great because they're in our colors, black and old gold. So that's kind of important. Then, of course, they have that virtual reality headset here, which allows for you to pop your cell phone right into here. You can watch the content, the virtual reality content right there on Seek.com. You think you're sitting in the room, guys? Put the graphic up, please. You think you're sitting in the room, and so again, what you should do is be able to use you can, like I say, watch the content. Or if you have a 360-degree camera, I have a 360-degree GoPro. You're able to watch that video as well with this particular VR headset, and places you right there wherever it was. All right, to get it, simply use the promo code RMVIP2020, RMVIP2020. Go to Seek.com, CEEK.com, and so we certainly appreciate them being a partner here with Roland Martin Unfiltered. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. A recent study published shows that we are in a mental health epidemic. Depression has skyrocketed. 3 times as many Americans met criteria to be diagnosed with depression during the pandemic than before it began. A pre-pandemic survey of about 5,000 American adults found that 8.5% of them showed strong signs of depression. That number rose to almost 28% when researchers surveyed almost 1,500 Americans from March to April. Remember, even Michelle Obama said that she was suffering from low-grade depression. Joining us now is Dr. Alfie Breland-Noble. She's a psychologist. Glad to have you on the show. Before we get into it, I just saw this clip, Doc, which is stunning. Dak Prescott He plays quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Of course.
In the offseason, his brother, 31 years old, died. Dak revealed that his brother died of a suicide. He talked about what his brother was enduring, having to care for their mother, being the lone provider for their mother who had suffered from colon cancer and who had passed away. And he opened up about how he went through moments of depression during this coronavirus crisis. Yeah. On a national television show, The Undisputed on Fox Sports 1, this is what Skip Bayless actually said about Dak Prescott opening up about depression.
I'm going to ask our audience to feel free to go ahead and condemn me if you choose as cold-blooded and insensitive on this issue. I have deep compassion for clinical depression, but when it comes to the quarterback of an NFL team, you know this as well as I, better than I do, it's the ultimate leadership position in sports. Am I right about that? You are commanding an entire franchise. What's the roster now? Is it 53 still?
53, but I think they got like 15 practice squad guys.
Okay. But you're commanding a lot of young men and some older men. And they're all looking to you to be their CEO, to be in charge of the football team. Because of all that, I don't have sympathy for him going public with, I got depressed. I suffered depression early in COVID to the point that I couldn't even go work out. Look, he's the quarterback of America's team.
That, Doc, is an abomination because that's actually what leaders are supposed to do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's infuriating more than anything because it speaks directly to the issues that prevent people from getting care. I have to say it because of the platform that I'm on right now, with Dak being a biracial black man and Skip not being of color. I do like that phrasing, of color. It has a very specific meaning. It is, as you said, an abomination for him to think that he could understand what Dak's experience is. He's not a man of color. He doesn't know what this is like. He doesn't know what those relationships are like in that man's family. I know that Dak lost his mother very long time ago, and that his brothers have been a very important part of his life. So, frankly, I have to say, how dare anybody suggest that someone should hide from a real expression of what they're experiencing, particularly when it relates to mental illness. I don't care what your job is. We have a responsibility to be open and honest about these kinds of things, so that other people won't feel that they have to hide. So I'm sorry for my anger, but it is really infuriating that anybody would think they have the right to express their opinion about another person's pain.
The thing that this issue, I mean, I've had several friends I know, men and women, who have talked about going through depression during coronavirus and just not being able to deal with it. My niece is struggling with the same thing because your whole world changes and you used to going to school and seeing friends and going out and doing those things, and all of a sudden that's completely shut down and you're in home and you can't see people, you can't hug people. I mean, I haven't seen my parents since Thanksgiving. And normally I would have flown back home I would have seen them 4 or 5 times because of graduations and holidays, and it hasn't happened. And folks are dealing with this. And the reality is, if folk don't say anything, then they're suffering in silence. And I got to find the name, but there was a young brother who was a star reporter for the Washington Post, killed himself just a couple of months ago. Because, again, folks are dealing with this, and many have no idea where all of a sudden it even comes from.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think some of this, so I have to say, today is World Suicide Prevention Day. So this is a topic I'm so happy that you all are covering this topic on your show, because you and I both know as Black people, this is not something that we as Black people talk about, which leads to some of these horrible outcomes, as you just described for this brother who died by suicide. So, it's really critical that we talk about things like signs and symptoms so that people understand and that there's an awareness, particularly in our community as Black people. I run a nonprofit, the Acoma Project. That's part of our work. Is talking with people about what are signs and symptoms that you need to be looking for, so that when it's time for you to get some help, you recognize that it's time to get some help. What I often will say is, I don't say we want to educate Black people, because Black people are not stupid. What I want to say is we want to bring it into Black people's awareness. We want to bring it into the awareness of people of color, so that as you've described your family members, yeah, I would imagine. I have children. I have two high schoolers, a 9th grader and an 11th grader. And this is unprecedented for them. This is unprecedented for all of us. So we all need to have a real clear awareness of what signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, eating disorders, all of these things affect us, because, mental illness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what color we are. It's going to show up. So you having the opportunity to give me an opportunity to talk about these issues is really critical. And, it's really, really important for people to understand that there are many different colors of faces and many different colors of people who are out there and willing to help them.
Before I go to my panel with questions, a friend of mine sent me this. It was a young woman, African-American, was a star sports journalist. I mean, I'm talking about was a star. 5 years ago on Labor Day, she at the time was 26 years old. Go to my iPad, people. This is what she posted. She posted, "It is National Suicide Prevention Week." She said, "It's also the week of my 31st birthday. 5 years ago this week, on my 26th birthday, I was supposed to die. I didn't want to die. I wanted out of my abusive marriage. But getting out would have required asking for help and acknowledging that I couldn't do it alone. I had too much pride. I had reassured my friends I was happy too many times to turn around and tell them about the reality of what I was experiencing in my marriage. So I tried to get out on my own. When I couldn't, I resorted to something unimaginable. In the moment, ending it all seemed easier than asking for help and admitting that my marriage was a mistake. In a span of 12 hours, I went from drinking and grilling with my husband on Labor Day to another miserable night to lighting myself on fire. I suffered burns to more than 85% of my body, and somehow, thanks to a ton of incredible medical professionals, I survived. I survived to tell you that suicide is never the answer, no matter how impossible your situation feels. I survived to tell you that in overcoming your most difficult moments, you can learn so many wonderful things about yourself. I survived to tell you that when those closest to you ask how you are, you should be honest. We have to normalize that it is okay to not be okay. In doing so, we can feel less alone. Because we all struggle at times, I survived to tell you that now is the best time to ask for help. I never considered suicide or had suicidal ideations. One day I was fighting with a smile on my face, trying to save face. The next, I didn't know how I could continue to save face, and it almost cost me my life. I survived to tell you that there can be so much joy and happiness and light after the darkest moments in your life. I know this. I've lived it. Honestly, I wasn't supposed to survive and experience all of this to obtain this type of peace. I almost missed it. Please learn from me. Please ask for help.
Oh, that just breaks my heart. There's so much that she's unpacking with what she's saying. I would say the most important thing is that she made it. That the other important thing is that she's really telling people that there is a way out, that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we have to be willing to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think the struggle is for many of us, particularly those of us who are Black. I'm going to tie this thread back to how we opened with that ignorance that Skip Bayless said. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. That was ridiculous. And I think a part of it is there's a direct line between when you are a person of color, when you are Black, and this idea that you have to be above reproach all the time. You don't want anybody to see that there's any crack or fissure in the facade, because I think for many of us, we think that if people find any little way to go in and attack us, they're going to pull us apart. And often, let's be honest, in many of our workspaces for our young people in school, that's what happens. If people find one thing wrong, they go in for the kill, so to speak.
And so that prevents us from demonstrating or showing any vulnerability, because as we saw with Skip, he criticized Dak for being open about not wanting to go to work because he was grieving. It's not just depression. He was experiencing grief at the loss of someone who was very dear to him. And so it makes sense to me that she would share that she felt like that. The one other thing I do feel like is important to unpack is when we as Black people, and this is not a criticism, it's an observation, say things like, I've heard other people say, well, I had no idea that that person was struggling. I didn't see any signs or symptoms. I think it's important for us to raise awareness about what signs and symptoms look like. Suicidal ideation is not always just about in the moment thinking, I want to take my life. That's not what it's always about. Sometimes it is, I wish I were not here anymore. So one of the things we do when we treat people and what we train people is we ask a person to respond to the question, is there any part of you that wants to die? Is there any part of you that no longer wants to be here? Because you're really trying to get at getting people off of this idea that 100% of who I am needs to be ready to die for me to feel that I'm experiencing suicidal ideation. So I'm just so heartbroken by the pain and the experience. And I do, as she shared, I want people to know they're not alone, because there's so many people out here struggling.
Yeah, and this was a sister. I'm going to show you all these photos. I mean, this was a sister, I said, who was a star journalist. And here's the deal: when you're a journalist, you work for a newspaper. These are your weapons. These are your weapons. Go to my iPad. And so now these are photos that she took, but you see her hands, and you see the impact of that decision of lighting herself on fire. This is a photo that she shared of her in the hospital. This is a photo of her, with her press pass. And so, again, people have to understand how we are going with people who are suffering from depression, and we all handle things a lot differently. I was asked by somebody, they said, man, how are you coping? I said, I'm good. And they said, yeah, but you used to traveling. I said, I am, but this is the most I haven't traveled in 16 years. Everybody handles stuff differently. Let's go to my panel for questions. Erica, you're first up.
Thank you, Roland. And thank you so much, Dr. Noble, for being on today. Appreciate you and all of the work that you do. My question to you is, specifically with us being in a public health crisis, we have Black folks who are essential workers. We have Black folks that are working from home, and folks who unfortunately have been laid off and cannot find a job. And then people who are already suffering with some of the things that you named, anxiety, PTSD, perhaps suicidal ideation. What are some of the tools that you would be able to provide to the general public when it seems as though this is something that everybody is experiencing, not being able to grieve people that we've lost to COVID-19 in the way that we're accustomed to, particularly in the Black community? So for these conditions that may be exacerbated for some people that are already suffering and perhaps taking medications, what do you offer to for people not to get to a place, hopefully, where some of the experiences that Roland brought forth with the journalists and perhaps even make it? What are some things that we can do?
Sure. So I appreciate the kind words, my sister, and I appreciate the question. There are a couple different things. One, I will say up front, for anybody who wants to go to therapy, it's all virtual for the most part right now. And there are many organizations right now, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say this, that are offering free mental health supports, free sessions of therapy for people. The Loveland Foundation, the Acoma Project, there's beam.org. There's so many organizations who are really working to try to support people who want to receive care. The Sad Girls Club is another one, to give them an opportunity to have exposure. So that's one. So if you can take advantage of those, I would encourage anybody to do that. Secondly, if you're not ready to go to therapy, you're not ready to go see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, any of the alphabet soup of folks who provide the care, there are a couple different things. The first thing is we have to acknowledge and recognize that mental illness is a thing that impacts us as Black people. There's no such thing as, we don't have those issues. Mental illness is white folks' problems. It's really not. It's everybody's issue. Once we acknowledge that mental illness is an issue that impacts us as Black people, we have to recognize and understand signs and symptoms. Again, I talk about awareness. Do we know what anxiety looks like? Do we know how depression feels? Do we know what the cluster of symptoms are that we need to be paying attention to? Do we know what it means to be exposed to trauma and have the resulting anxiety and depression as a result of being exposed to trauma? Earlier this month or last month, our sister Gabrielle Union talked about the recurrence of symptoms of PTSD related to a sexual assault that she experienced when she was much younger. She was 19, 20 years old, because we are in this condition of coronavirus and being stuck in the house. So it's the ability to understand and recognize when we're not feeling quite right and being able to associate that with signs and symptoms of psychological distress and mental illness. Then I would say, once you have an idea that you might be dealing with something, it is taking active steps. I talk about active coping all the time. Get off of social media. Don't stay on social media all day. Curate your news. Don't sit and watch all the news all the time. Yes, you need to be informed, because that's a good one. People say, yeah, but I need to be informed, Dr. Alfred. Okay, that's all fine and good. But you don't need to sit and watch the same stuff over and over and over. There was a young man who died by suicide, and that thing was circulating on TikTok. Like, I'm horrified that anybody would want to watch something like that. Just to stay away from that. I am an avid meditator. I meditate daily. I've been doing it for 17, 18 years, daily for about 4 or 5. Exercise. Now I'm going to sound like people's mom. Get some sleep, right? You need good sleep, because if you're tired, you can't manage your health well. You need to eat better. All of us need to eat better, myself included. I need to lay off the French fries. And you need to find people to talk to, right? The other thing about talking to each other, one thing that we do as Black people, and I promise I'm almost done, is we share our stress. So I'd like to show people it's like a pot. Think a visual of a big cooking pot. Everybody dumps their stress in that pot, and everybody's eating out the pot at the same time. Sometimes we just need to be a listening ear and not trade stresses with each other. Sometimes we need to just talk and not allow the other person to give us whatever stress they're dealing with. So those are some of the things that I would say.
Thank you.
Reese.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Breland Noble. Those are really amazing points that you made. My question is, how important is it to you that we kind of properly identify those things? Because to me, depression is a heavy word. Mental illness is a heavy word. And sometimes you don't feel well. And that time I've had moments where I've struggled and I felt like depression is probably what I'm suffering from. But then also I'm like, well, that sounds a little bit like overkill for, having a moment here and there. How much does the timing in terms of the persistence of anxiety, depression, or however it's characterized, play into how it's, characterized? Or is it more so about if you're feeling a certain way that you take these different steps that you've laid out?
Sure. So the first, I think it's a wonderful question. I really appreciate it. It's very thoughtful. And it gives me an opportunity to really talk a little bit about unpacking this issue of mental illness and stigma. Because one of the things that happens is, again, going back to what Skip said, when people hear people like Skip Bayless criticize and say things like that, what a lot of us do, myself included, is we want to be as far away from any mental illness label as we can possibly get. God forbid I have that. I don't want that, because I don't want people like Skip talking about me like that. And so it really sometimes puts people in a bind, because even if they're actually struggling with something that's diagnosable, let's be clear about diagnosis. Most of the diagnoses that we have were not created with Black people or people of color in mind. However, that's what we have for now. I think that if you have a culturally competent provider like myself, we are the kind of people who can help you sort of unpack what it is that you're feeling, whoever it is, and give a label to it that feels appropriate and that feels what I call culturally relevant. So, for example, when you're talking about depression, you want to be looking for a cluster. I'm so appreciative of the wording that you use, a cluster of 3 to 4 symptoms that persist over a 2-week period. Maybe you don't feel it every day, but more often than not, if you come in my office or anyone comes into my office and we start having a conversation, I'm starting to think depression if I hear significant changes in sleeping habits. You sleep a lot more, you sleep a lot less. Significant changes in eating habits, a lot more or a lot less. Significant changes in your mood is low. Maybe you're not just down in the dumps all the time, but it's pretty low. Low grade, like Michelle Obama described, the wonderful Michelle Obama, I love her. That low grade, bad, low mood. One thing that we don't often talk about that is often a symptom that shows up for our brothers, Black and Latinx in particular, is irritability and anger, right? A lot of times underneath that irritability, and anger, that's depression. Because what's more acceptable, bucking up to somebody or looking right sad and pitiful? It's not acceptable for our young men and our men to look sad and pitiful, so you look angry. It serves the same purpose. You want to keep people away. So if I'm angry and fussing at everybody and snapping, nobody wants to get close to me, and that's what I want. People who cry a lot, right? You're crying for for unknown reasons. All of those things, if you see clusters of these that last, like I said, over about a 2-week period, that's when it's time to pay attention. So if it's up and down and it's not persistent, you have a low mood Monday, you don't have another low mood for 2 weeks, you probably are not dealing with depression. But if it's hanging around and you can't really lift yourself out of it, that might be time to talk to somebody. The final thing I'll say is we have something called persistent depressive disorder. We used to call it dysthymia. It's a low grade, low mood that just hangs out for a really long time. Maybe it's not as high as depression, but as Michelle Obama described, I would say that that's probably what she was dealing with, persistent depressive disorder.
Great car.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Dr. Alfie, not only for your expertise and years of work, but for your spirit. And the love for our people is evident. And I'm interested, and this kind of continues in the vein of part of the answer you gave to Reese. Your collective, Akoma. I think that means heart in Akan in tree. I'm wondering, and you kind of answered this in part when you said that a lot of these assessments were not built with us in mind, with our people. How important is it for us to think about culture and cultural resources when it comes to trying to really craft solutions to a challenge like depression when it comes to Black people?
Oh my goodness. So first of all, I have to say, HU, I am a Howard University graduate and proud of it. Yes. And I think that Akoma, as you said, I have 2 A's in mind because that's what fit the acronym. So I really, of course, you're a Howard person, so you would catch that. And it's exactly what you said. And we created it that way when we started it. The full acronym is African American Knowledge Optimized for Mindfully Healthy Adolescents. And now we just go by Akoma because my mission and my goal was to do exactly what you said in your question, which is to center Blackness, to center the cultural wisdom and knowledge, to center the aspects of resilience that come from our culture, because I feel like they can benefit everybody. They really can benefit us as Black people, but beyond that, they can benefit everybody. And so the idea that you really have to have people who are culturally competent providing your care. It's nice if people are kind, but kindness is not the only thing that you need if you're a Black person or a person of color who's struggling with mental illness. You need somebody who understands who you are as a cultural being. You need someone who understands and can sit with you so that you don't have to explain every single aspect of your lived experience when you're trying to engage in therapy with them. This whole concept of what it means to be a Black person and have these issues around lightness or darkness of skin. If I'm coming into therapy, I don't want to explain that to you. You need to understand where that comes from so that I can get to the business of healing, not educating you about my people. So my passion for this really comes out of this idea that the fields of psychology and psychiatry, when we started, we certainly were not at the forefront or even the center of people's minds. But over time, you think about the Doctors Clark, who came up with the doll studies. You think about over the years, Linda James Myers, the doctor who came up with this concept of an Afrocentric worldview. I think about all these kinds of folks who have Dr. Cheryl Grills, who's part of the Black Psychologists of America out in California, who came up with this concept of healing circles, even the language. This is why culture is important, because for Black people, we might not want to go to someone and call it therapy. That's fine. Some people are okay with that. Other people want to talk about healing because that's really the journey that we're on. So this concept of cultural competence, this concept of cultural relevance, that's central to my work and is central to the work of other similar organizations that I've mentioned, because for so long, we as Black people, our unique needs, our unique experiences, the whole idea of racial trauma. I can remember when I started about 20 years ago, you couldn't even say racial trauma because nobody knew what you were talking about, or they would poo-poo it and tell you that you were wrong. Or this concept of acceptable means of expressing depressive illness or depressive symptoms among Black people and young brothers. the anger piece. I remember getting into a flat out argument with a white colleague at the time who was supposed to be a mentor because he told me that was ridiculous. That didn't make any sense. And so now we're in a time, in a moment where we have the ability through a show just like this to be able to say to people, yeah, Black people have unique mental health issues and experiences which require unique people and unique scholars and unique professionals who have cultural competence and knowledge of our lived experience to be able to help. So that's what we're about with the COMA. These other organizations that I've mentioned, it's really all about the other thing. The final thing I'll say is with the COMA, we produce research. So it's not just about using what other people have said. We produce the content that informs the work that we use so that we can create what we call a culturally relevant evidence base, because one size truly does not fit all.
All right, then. Doc, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much for your advice, counsel, and wisdom. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, Seek.com is a Black-owned company founded by Mary Spiel. They have a couple of great products for you. First of all, these are amazing headphones right here. These particular headphones are Bluetooth, tremendous bass, 360-degree headphones, 4D. You can use this for gaming if you're playing video games. Also, of course, listen to music, videos, you name it. And Greg, yeah, they're great because they're in our colors, black and old gold. So that's kind of important. Then, of course, they have that virtual reality headset here, which allows for you to pop your cell phone right into here. You can watch the content, the virtual reality content right there on Seek.com. You think you're sitting in the room. Guys, put the graphic up, please. You think you're sitting in the room. And so, again, what you should do is be able to use you can, like I say, watch the content. Or if you have a 360-degree camera, I have a 360-degree GoPro. You're able to watch that video as well with this particular VR headset, and places you right there wherever it was. All right, to get it, you simply use the promo code RMVIP2020, RMVIP2020. Go to Seek.com, CEEK.com, and so we certainly appreciate them being a partner here. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. What do you make of the CDC director saying a vaccine is not going to be ready for the American public until 2021? Donald Trump has a news conference that comes out and says, oh, no, he was mistaken. The CDC director was mistaken. It's going to be ready in a month or so.
Yeah. So the vaccine trials are still underway. And my understanding of what these vaccine companies are doing, concurrent with studying these drugs, they are producing doses of the vaccine. That is atypical. Typically, a vaccine is studied, it is checked for efficacy, meaning does it cause an immune response? Does it protect the people who received it? It's checked for safety, right? Do people have bad side effects? Are they terrible side effects? Are they side effects that we can accept? Like, what's the risk versus the benefit of receiving the vaccine? And if the benefit far outweighs the risk and you're not endangering people by giving the vaccine, then you go into production. Now the vaccines are starting to be produced, but you will need billions and billions of doses of this vaccine to protect the population worldwide. And it takes months to produce a vaccine, even when the studies are successful and tell you that the vaccines work. So he's really speaking lies. I'm going to just stay on the path that you're on, lies. You know, he's saying things that are not scientifically possible, but that's what happens when you jump out of your lane. He needs to let the experts speak so that we can receive the truth and so that people continue to do the right thing, giving people false hope, telling people to let their guard down, making light of the situation is dangerous, and we are seeing the consequences of this over and over and over again.
Well, the expert did speak, but then he's contradicting the experts, and that's part of the problem. Doc, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. I want to talk about this other thing that happened in the debate, y'all, where Donald Trump brought up, just play the audio, y'all. This Lord.
The waiters?
The herd.
Waiters?
The herd. The herd. Do y'all have the video? Listen, watch this, y'all. Watch this.
Okay, and it is going away, and it's probably going to go away now a lot faster because of the vaccine. It would go away without the vaccine, George, but it's going to go away a lot faster with it. It would go away without the vaccine? Sure, over a period of time. Sure, with time it goes away. And many deaths. And you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen. That will all happen. But with the vaccine, I think it will go away very quickly.
Got to take a quick break.
But I really believe we're rounding the corner, and I believe that's strong.
As you know, Dr. Fauci disagrees with that.
Well, I mean, but a lot of people do agree with me.
See, that's what you asked him. Who?
Let me bring up Dr. Alexia Gaffney, an infectious disease expert. Doc, this fool just said, even with the vaccine, it's just going to go away. Viruses just don't go away.
No, they don't, Roland. I mean, if you're going to jump out of your lane, at least speak the right language. It's not herd mentality, it's herd immunity. And it would take for at least 70% of the United States population, you're talking about 200 million people, to become naturally infected with COVID or vaccinated in order for us to gain or develop herd immunity. But the problem is talking about natural herd immunity means that you're just willing to risk more than the approaching 200,000 American lives we've already lost in order to achieve herd immunity. The virus is not just going to go away.
I want you to hold that point. That was a guy, he sent a tweet out, and he, let me switch. I want to show this, y'all. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, because on this whole notion of herd immunity. This is what he, hopefully I can show it. This guy, Kyle Felster. Kyle is he's a breaking news editor at CNN. This is what he said. There are approximately 328.2 million people in the United States. To get the low end of herd immunity, about 60% of the population must catch COVID. That's about 196,920 cases. The current U.S. death rate is about 2.96%. So that means in order to achieve herd immunity, we would have to accept 5,836,679 deaths.
Unacceptable.
So is that calculation correct, that we would have to, so to accept herd immunity, we would also have to accept not just the COVID infections, but the COVID deaths that come from herd immunity?
And that's a conservative number, in terms of the number of
5.8 million.
I'm calling it conservative because if you had that many deaths, imagine how many people are going to require hospitalization. We didn't see peak numbers of COVID all over the United States at the exact same time, but where we had hotspots and epicenters, our health systems were overwhelmed. If we stop everything, we don't do anything to prevent the spread of the virus in a ridiculous attempt to achieve natural herd immunity, we will completely overwhelm our healthcare systems, and we will lose even more American people as a result of this virus, way more than that number is predicting, because that number is based on perfect circumstances, being able to treat those that need to be hospitalized, being able to give everyone who needs it critical care. And we already saw what could happen when our systems become overwhelmed. That is not something that we want to see happening nationwide simultaneously.
This is, so first of all, just explain this herd immunity. There are a number of people who keep saying that's the only way we can do this. They also are suggesting that if you do herd immunity, that once you get it, you can't get it again. That's not true.
No, it's not true that once you get the virus, you can't get it again. Probably a small proportion of people who have been infected will get reinfected, but the reality is we don't know. This is our first time dealing with COVID-19. It's a brand new infection, even though we are 8 months in terms of our knowledge of this virus, but there's still a lot to learn as things progress and evolve. So the concept of herd immunity is that if the majority of your population is immune to an infection that is communicable or contagious from person to person, whether that immunity comes naturally or whether that immunity comes via a vaccination, then you protect the overall population or community or herd, because with less and less individuals susceptible to the infection, then the people who haven't been vaccinated and the people who haven't had the infection are protected because you stop the spread or propagation of the infection. So that number needs to be around 70%. But we already talked about how many lives would be at stake if we allow 200 plus million Americans to become sick with this infection. So we need to continue our social distancing. We need to continue to isolate. We need to continue to wear our masks. We need to continue hand hygiene. We need to continue to avoid large crowds. Everything that we have been doing up until now needs to continue, and it will need to continue even when we have a vaccine available for some time.
I gotta ask you about this here. The CDC director, Robert Redfield, testified today about the importance of masks. This is what he had to say.
Go so far as to say that this face mask is more guaranteed to protect me against COVID than when I take a COVID vaccine, because the immunogenicity may be 70%. And if I don't get an immune response, the vaccine's not going to protect me. This face mask will. I might even go so
Doc,
far as to say that.
Your thoughts about that, what he just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so is a mask better than a vaccine? It's comparing apples to oranges. We still will need to continue to take the isolation and social distance precautions, even when people begin to get vaccinated, because the reality is not everyone is going to get vaccinated, and there's no such thing as a perfect vaccine. So if you're talking about only a particular proportion of the population getting vaccinated and then the vaccine having efficacy or protecting 70% of the people who receive it, there's still some significant gaps that we need to keep in mind. And so we will still need to continue to wear our mask. Nothing in this pandemic situation is a get out of jail free card. So we really just have to be vigilant, and we have to let this thing, in a sense, run its course, but not run its course like take off your mask, go do what you will, return back to life, and see where the cards fall. That's not what we're talking about here. It really needs to be a mass effort, and it needs to be a concerted effort. Everybody needs to be doing the same thing to protect themselves as well as protect one another from the spread of this infection.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding of services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020.